Hi, welcome back guys. This is your Sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Becomes Demon's Soulmate? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Alice pleaded for mercy as chaos erupted. She begged the attacker not to kill him and tried to protect him, but the assailant answered that the victim was just like her and moved closer with a cold, mocking tone. A concerned companion called her name, and she insisted she would be all right, trying to steady herself. The attacker barked a harsh command and then struck the other person in a sudden, violent move. The scene unfolded like a dramatic, frantic clash from an action animation, and the wounded figure collapsed amid cries. Alice screamed in despair and then demanded to know what had been done. Her voice trembled with worry, anger, and exhaustion. A bystander replied that if the victim was lucky he might survive. Alice was stunned, overwhelmed by questions. Why had this happened? What had she done to deserve this? All she had ever wanted was one friend. She remembered how happy she had felt when she first met him, how he had been the only person she trusted and the one who always cheered her up. Now he was hurt because of her, and guilt swallowed her. She apologized aloud to him, begging forgiveness. 5 years earlier, Alice had grown weary of the constant abuse and had decided to leave home. It was early afternoon when she stood before the large green gates of the Leaf Village, unsure and trembling. One of the guards demanded to know her business in the village, and Alice replied timidly that she only wanted to live there. The guards escorted her toward the Hokage's office, and as she walked through streets filled with cheerful people, she felt a hopeful certainty that she would like it here. She suddenly stopped when she noticed a boy about her age sitting alone and crying. He had bright blonde hair, and despite her shyness she felt an inexplicable bond with him. Alice approached and quietly asked why he was crying so she would not frighten him further. The boy explained that no one liked him, that people treated him poorly, called him names, and had even tried to kill him, and that he had no friends. Alice recognized the same loneliness in him she had felt in her past and told him she would be his friend. The boy, surprised, asked why she would want to be his friend when it might get her into trouble. Alice said she had been like him in her old village and introduced herself as Alice Akane. The boy answered that his name was Naruto Uzumaki. They parted with shy smiles and promises to see each other again. At the Hokage's office, the old leader asked Alice for her name and listened to her request to live in the village. When he learned she had become Naruto's friend, he encouraged her to help him. Naruto was lonely and could use someone kind. Alice asked, somewhat awkwardly, if she could live close to Naruto, and the Hokage agreed to make her his neighbor. Alice was excited to move in. A few evenings later she met Naruto again at his apartment door and realized they were neighbors. He pointed out that her apartment was the next door to his, and they were both delighted. Alice mentioned that she would begin attending the ninja academy the next day and that their sensei would be Irika. Naruto said he had Irika too and offered that she could sit with him. Alice thanked him and left to settle in for the first night, arranging to stay nearby. The next morning, Alice felt nervous but eager. She met Naruto at the academy, and they continued to support one another as classmates and neighbors. Naruto reflected on how kind Alice had been, calling her his very first friend and wondering what she meant when she said she had been like him before. He looked forward to seeing her again and felt lighter knowing he had someone who treated him like a person. Over the following days, Alice and Naruto grew closer as friends. Alice found comfort in being accepted, and Naruto found joy in having a companion who cared. Their bond became a steady presence in both their lives as they navigated the challenges of training and the small trials of youth. I woke up, went to the kitchen to make breakfast ramen, then went back to my room and woke Ollie. Naruto told Ollie to wake up. Ollie protested that it was too early and that she was not a morning person. Naruto reminded her that they had to go to school. Ollie said she had forgotten. Naruto went to the bathroom to get ready. When he came out, both of them were dressed. Ollie wore a light blue short-sleeve shirt with a longer mesh sleeve underneath and matching shorts with a white stripe on each side. Her long black hair completed the look. They ate their ramen together. Naruto urged Ollie that they could not be late. Ollie said she was walking as fast as she could and asked him to stop running, which surprised Naruto. From Alice's perspective. They finally arrived at school. As they walked past some adults dropping off children, the adults kept giving Naruto hostile looks. Alice felt anger building, but what pushed her over the edge was when a child threw a rock at Naruto's head. He staggered, clutching his head. Alice felt furious. She did not know Naruto well, but she knew he was a kind person. Alice demanded to know why the boy had hit Naruto. The boy ran away, and Alice called him a coward. Alice asked Naruto if he was okay. He only cried, and she felt sympathy. Alice asked why people treated him so badly. Naruto looked at her and said people in the village disliked him and already assumed he was different. Alice told him that she would never leave him and that being different was not something to be ashamed of. She said she had heard a woman once tell her that it was normal to be different and that being unique was something to be proud of. Naruto looked at her with his blue eyes and asked her to promise. Alice made a pinky promise with him. Naruto said he would tell her more after class and reminded her that they needed to hurry or Teacher Irika would start scolding them. They ran to class. In class, Teacher Irika announced a new student, and Alice introduced herself, gave her name, and sat next to Naruto. The rest of the day unfolded with lessons about chakra, shuriken practice, lunch, a silly dispute over animal crackers that Alice won, and then studying. During shuriken practice, Naruto threw wildly and nearly struck Teacher Irika, which made Alice laugh until Irika glared at her. Alice chose to sit next to Naruto again, with him on her right. On her left sat a student with a peculiar haircut who seemed brooding and kept staring at the window as if lost in thought. When Teacher Irika handed out papers, he tossed Naruto's paper to him and gave him a hard look, the same kind of glare Alice had seen from the brooding student. When Irika handed Alice her paper, he smiled as if nothing had happened, and Alice felt the gesture was insincere. After school, Alice remembered that Naruto had said he would tell her why people disliked him. Naruto called to her to ask if she was ready to hear. Alice answered that she was, though she realized she might have sounded too eager earlier. Naruto looked puzzled for a moment, then said he could tell her now, his tone turning sad. Alice reminded him that she had promised to listen and gave him a genuine smile. Naruto did not want to tell Alice that he had a demon fox sealed inside him. His grandfather had told him on his 4th birthday that the 4th Hokage had sealed the beast within him and that his mother had carried the 9 tails before him. His mother, Kushina Uzumaki, had died after the 9 tails broke free. His grandfather never revealed his father's name. He only told Naruto to search for it in the village library and warned that the truth would be a shock. Naruto had been 4 and could not make sense of most of it. When Naruto begged Alice not to leave while he revealed the truth, he began to tear up. Alice, surprised by how different he seemed from the energetic boy she had met the day before, reassured him with a steady, warm smile and promised she would stay. The others nearby exchanged murmurs, then fell silent when Alice urged them to listen because Naruto had something important to say. Half an hour later, Alice and the others sat stunned. Naruto cried as he described the 9 tails, the deaths of his parents, and the loneliness of growing up without knowing his father. Alice tried to comfort him and found herself crying for all he had endured. The grief in his voice felt unlike anything she had heard before. Naruto went on. The worst part, he said, was that his 8th birthday was the following day. Alice could not understand why that would be terrible. Naruto explained that the 4th Hokage had died the day the 9 tails attacked, and the villagers blamed him for the leader's death. Every year his birthday became the focus of the villagers' hatred. They ambushed and bullied him in the streets, staging chaotic confrontations that left him exhausted and shaken. He hated the day because it had been turned into a ritual of cruelty. Naruto added that his grandfather kept a small group of elite guards to protect him, but they could not be everywhere, and the villagers struck when they could. He had lost more than he had been accused of causing. He had lost family he never truly knew. The orphanage that had once housed him had thrown him out at 5, saying he was too old and too dangerous to remain. They left him to fend for himself on the streets. Alice listened as he recounted being pushed away by those who should have helped, and she felt his pain deeply. Alice promised to protect him with all her strength and to stand by him on his birthday. She explained that she understood that kind of hurt because she had experienced similar hardships, though he had suffered even more. She told him she would not leave him and that his story had given her an even stronger reason to stay. Naruto's eyes widened at her words, and she urged him to hold back his tears. Naruto then asked Alice about her life before she had come to the village. Since he had shared his past, Alice prepared to tell hers. Alice braced herself and began to tell Naruto about the small village she had come from in the land of waves. Naruto listened attentively. A silver-haired masked operative stood outside the academy, waiting for the blond boy he had been assigned to guard. Iruka asked him what he was doing there. Kakashi replied that he was there for Naruto. Iruka explained that Naruto had already left with the new student, Alice, and pointed past the swing Naruto usually sat on. Kakashi followed the direction and thanked Iruka. From a distance, Kakashi overheard Naruto and Alice talking. He listened to Naruto's tragic life story and to Alice's tale as well. A tear fell from his eye as he heard the account of Naruto as the host of the Nine Tails and the way the village had treated him. Kakashi had intended to take Naruto back to his apartment, but when Alice revealed she was similar to Naruto, he froze and decided to stay and listen. Alice explained that the village had been fine for most children, but not for those who carried a tailed beast. She apologized to Naruto for using the word demon, and Naruto told her it was all right and encouraged her to continue. Alice said she had a fox spirit like Naruto's and that the spirit had told her there might be another fox spirit elsewhere in the world. To keep her distinct, Alice had given the spirit a name, Nabi. She described Nabi as having 8.5 tails. Alice looked at the sky while she spoke and then met Naruto's eyes, relieved to see he understood. Alice went on to say that she had a little sister whose health had always been fragile. When Alice was about 4 years old, her sister began having trouble breathing, so Alice took her to the hospital because their parents were exhausted from caring for her. The doctor helped, and Alice carried the baby home. The baby was only 2 months old, and Alice had been overly protective. While she had gone to the store to buy supplies for lunch, a man had been holding her sister with a small blade and demanding money. When Alice returned, she found that the man had attacked the family, her parents were killed and her sister did not survive. Naruto gave Alice a look of sympathy, and she returned his compassion with a sad smile. The man had also assaulted Alice, and in the struggle Alice lost control. Nabi intervened when she transformed and subdued the attacker, ending the threat. After that event, Alice's hair, once dark blue, had turned pitch black. She did not mind and said she actually liked the change. Naruto expressed sorrow for Alice's loss, but Alice insisted that Naruto's loss had been worse. She said she had lived alone until she eventually made her way to the Hidden Leaf Village. When the villagers discovered what had happened, they feared her. She had no friends and no one to trust. People harassed and even attacked her, and she had reached a breaking point from the constant hostility. There were no shinobi in her village to stop the abuse, so the damage was limited, but the emotional toll was heavy. When she left the village, no one tried to stop her. She walked for days and weeks until she arrived at the Hidden Leaf, where she finally bonded with Nabi. Alice sensed Nabi wanting to communicate and asked Naruto to allow it. She told Naruto that Nabi wanted to speak to him and to the Nine Tails. Kakashi wondered if such a thing was even possible, but he waited to see what would happen. Naruto was surprised that Nabi wanted to speak to him and to the Nine Tails, but he agreed. Alice placed her hand on his head and asked him to close his eyes. Naruto did as he was told, and his vision went dark. When he opened his eyes mentally, he found himself standing in a sewer-like mental space beside Alice. Alice explained that they were in his mind, in the place where the Nine Tails resided. She pointed to a bright light and encouraged Naruto to follow it. Naruto hesitated, remembering that his grandfather had warned him never to follow lights, but Alice shrugged and said she thought his grandfather had been joking. Ali laughed and explained that with both of their minds in the place, they could get lost easily. They walked toward the light, and then Naruto saw 2 large foxes grinning at them. One fox with 9 tails introduced itself as Kurama. The other gave its name as Nabi. Alice told Naruto that the foxes were his. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, embarrassed. Naruto and Alice stood before Kurama and Nabi, and Naruto felt a little afraid. Kurama announced his identity, and Nabi introduced himself as well. Alice asked how the two knew each other. Nabi explained that Kurama was his brother. Naruto and Alice gaped at the revelation. Nabi, a little irritated at the two 7-year-olds, reminded them not to react so loudly. Alice then asked why Kurama had wanted to speak with Naruto. Kurama explained that being a tailed beast host could be difficult. He said he and Nabi had observed their lives and had witnessed the hardships Naruto had faced. Kurama apologized for those who had treated Naruto badly and added that he could help heal his wounds. Naruto thanked Kurama for everything. Alice asked about the name Q, and Naruto said it was just a shorter nickname for Kurama. Kurama informed them that because Nabi and he were related, Naruto and Alice would share a special, unbreakable bond. Nabi added that this was why Alice had felt compelled to be with Naruto when he first arrived in the village. She had simply nodded and smiled in reply. Kurama explained that they would be able to share some of their chakra when it was most needed, and that Alice, like Naruto, would have faint whisker-like marks on her face. Alice reacted with excited delight. Kurama continued, describing the bond. They would be able to sense each other from any distance, and if one were in danger the other would immediately know. He finished by saying that the four of them could communicate whenever they wished, and that Kurama and Nabi could initiate telepathic contact if Naruto and Alice asked. Naruto asked if they could leave, and Kurama, clearly annoyed, agreed. Later, Naruto thought the encounter had been incredible. Ali laughed and said it had been awesome. Naruto told Ali that his ANBU handler was probably waiting for him. Almost on cue, an ANBU appeared and greeted Naruto, asking if he was ready to go home. Naruto responded that he was and introduced Alice as his new neighbor. The ANBU muttered that there was little point in wearing a mask if people could recognize him, which made Alice giggle. The ANBU greeted Alice politely and urged them to go. As they walked, Naruto's stomach grumbled, and Alice suggested stopping for jinchuuriki ramen. Naruto brightened at the idea, delighted that Alice also loved ramen. The day passed, and October 10th arrived. It was Naruto's 8th birthday. Naruto woke feeling tired and still thinking over the information from the day before. Alice was in her apartment, wrapping Naruto's birthday present. She had promised the day before to protect Naruto with her life, just as he would protect her, and she had prepared her ninja tools for any threat that might come. Alice felt conflicted about whether to be happy or sad on Naruto's birthday, but she resolved to make it an awesome celebration. She hoped he would like the presents: a plush fox, a recipe for ramen, and a picture of his parents. She smiled at how easily she had handled a couple of ANBU encounters while gathering the gifts. Earlier that day, Alice had gone to the library to look for information about Naruto's mother. The librarian directed her to the section on past kunoichi, and Alice searched the shelves, annoyed by the dullness of the place. When she could not remember the exact name, she asked Nabi for help. Nabi said he would ask Kurama. Kurama told her that Naruto's mother had been Kushina Uzumaki. Alice thanked Nabi and felt she owed him one. With the name in hand, Alice found the entries under you. She read about Kushina Uzumaki, a kunoichi from the Uzumaki clan who had been the second host of Kurama. The account described Kushina's spirited personality and how she had been teased for her red hair. In response, she had defended herself fiercely, earning a fiery nickname among her classmates. The entry also mentioned that she had been married to the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Alice closed the book and prepared the small, thoughtful presents for Naruto, hoping they would bring him comfort and happiness on his birthday. She died the day the Nine Tails was released, along with her husband. People knew she had been PR'd, but the child was never found, and the fourth Hokage's legacy seemed to vanish. Alice decided she would need Naruto's blood to access the Namikaze estate. She called him and asked for a sample. Naruto, puzzled, agreed and gave her a small amount of blood. With that, she was able to bypass the blood seal at the Namikaze estate. The house was vast, larger than she had imagined. Inside she found a photograph of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, and another picture of the three of them together. Kushina looked weak in the second image, so Alice guessed it had been taken on the day of the attack. Naruto looked very young and sweet in the photo. Alice took both pictures and searched further. She found a room that appeared to have been meant for a baby, and on a table a hidden scroll addressed to Naruto and a small box labeled Happy Birthday Naruto. Since the gifts were hidden, Alice assumed they had been saved for a future time and decided to keep them for Naruto. In the kitchen she found a recipe card for ramen and she took one copy for him and one for herself. She left before the guards returned. The memory had been a small adventure for Alice. Now she set off for Naruto's house to celebrate his 8th birthday, determined to make it the best birthday possible. She knocked on the door, and Naruto invited her in. Alice found him huddled in a corner, tense and frightened. Naruto explained that he had mistaken her for someone who might want to hurt him. The day felt dangerous to him, as it often had. When he saw Alice, he immediately ran to her and hugged her tightly, tears falling from his blue eyes. Alice felt a pang of concern but stayed cheerful. She reassured Naruto and told him to put on his best clothes because there would be a party. Naruto brightened and eagerly began to prepare. Alice made a light joke that embarrassed him for a moment, then she quickly corrected herself. On their way to the park, a passerby suddenly hurled a beer bottle toward Naruto and shouted a threat that was cut short. Alice reacted instinctively to defend Naruto. In a swift, energetic flurry of moves more like a determined, protective display than a trained assault, she drove the man back. The man, stunned and outmatched, fled the scene. At the park a large poster read "Happy Birthday, Naruto." Old Man Hokage stood nearby, along with an Umbu operative and Tuchi and Ayam, the ramen shop owners. Alice felt relieved to see Naruto smiling for the first time that day. Alice presented her gifts first, a fox plush and the ramen recipe she had found. Naruto's eyes lit up and he tackled her to the ground in excitement. Alice laughed and reminded him she had more. She then handed him the photographs and the hidden scroll. The Hokage asked what they were. Alice explained that she had done research and believed the two people in the photos were Naruto's parents. The crowd reacted with surprise. Naruto began to cry, and Alice understood that he was moved because he finally felt a connection to his family. The Umbu operative instructed Naruto to use his blood to open the scroll. Naruto cut his thumb, smeared a bit of blood across the seal, and the scroll glowed a soft orange. He read the letter aloud so everyone could hear. The letter was written by Minato Namikaze. In it, Minato wished Naruto a happy birthday and explained that he and Kushina were his parents. Minato apologized for sealing the 9 tails within Naruto but said he had done it because he believed in Naruto and wanted to protect him. He urged Naruto to believe in himself despite what others might say and to seek out Kakashi when he needed guidance. Minato closed the letter with warm words of love and encouragement. Those who heard the letter were moved. Naruto listened carefully, feeling the weight and warmth of the words from the father he had never known. Alice complained loudly that she wished she had a father like that. Her own father, she said, only ate, slept, and was rude around the house. Naruto noticed Alice's excitement and opened the second scroll. Inside he found a photograph of his mother when she had still been P-Arginin-T. He smiled at the picture and thought that her hair looked beautiful. The letter from Kushina wished Naruto a happy birthday and explained that she regretted not being there in person. She reminded him that he was a big boy now and that, even if she were gone, he would always be her child. She urged him to be proud of his Uzumaki heritage and to remember that he was not a monster but the son of Minato and Kushina, heir to both the Namikaze and Uzumaki lines. She told him she and Minato believed he could control the beast sealed within him and encouraged him to pursue his dreams. She instructed him that when he turned 10, or was older, he should place his blood on the seal to learn sealing techniques. Above all, she wrote that for him to be happy he needed love, and she wished she could have given it herself. She signed the letter with "Love, Kushina Uzumaki," and added a postscript explaining that she and Minato had arranged, if they died, to meet him once a year on his birthday. Naruto thanked his parents silently and told himself he did not blame them for what had happened. He loved them, and because of them he had the friends and family who meant everything to him. Alice pointed out that there was more in the scroll. The children asked Gramps whether it would really be possible to meet their parents again on a birthday, and Gramps admitted that he did not know. High on a cloud, Kushina felt a pull and looked down, calling to Minato that Naruto was reading their letters. Minato hurried over, and Kushina commented that the girl with Naruto looked pretty. Minato simply shrugged. When Kushina and Minato saw Naruto reading and telling himself he did not blame them, they smiled through tears. Minato said that Naruto was a good son and that he seemed to have inherited aspects of Kushina's way of speaking. Kushina pretended to be annoyed but was clearly touched. When Naruto touched the seal on the scroll, they exchanged a look of hopeful surprise. When Naruto broke the seal, there were two glows, one yellow and one red. After a few seconds, two human-shaped figures formed from the light and solidified into Minato and Kushina standing before everyone. The sight of the fourth Hokage and one of the village's strongest female ninjas stunned the crowd. Naruto froze, tears appearing in his eyes as he realized who stood before him. Minato spoke calmly to reassure his son, and Kushina gave her warm greeting. The crowd watched in disbelief. Naruto held Alice's hand tightly and cried at the confirmation that his parents were truly present. Alice tried to tease him gently, saying he should be happy rather than making a poor first impression, though she too fought back tears. Minato gently urged Naruto to find happiness in the moment, and Kushina scolded her husband playfully for trying to stop their son from crying, then smiled warmly at Naruto. Kakashi, who had been watching, was surprised by the appearance and by how much Naruto had grown. Minato acknowledged Kakashi's growth and greeted him. The third Hokage arrived and greeted Minato and Kushina before taking his leave to allow the reunion to continue. Tucci and Ayam also left to tend to their shop. Kushina asked Naruto to wait for a private moment to speak with Kakashi, and Naruto nodded before going with Alice to play in the village playground. After Minato and Kushina finished speaking with the elders, Kakashi left. When the parents returned toward Naruto, they found an angry mob surrounding the children. The crowd shouted accusations calling them demons, blaming them for past losses, and even invoking the death of the fourth Hokage. One woman screamed that the parents should have died instead and wished death upon Naruto and his young companion. Those words set Kushina and Minato's protective instincts alight. Rather than respond with lethal force, Minato and Kushina acted immediately to shield the children. In a swift, controlled display of power, they moved in front of Naruto and Alice and used non-lethal techniques to disperse and disarm the attackers. A bright, focused gust and several well-placed maneuvers pushed the crowd back and left them stunned on the ground, unable to continue their assault. The parents' intervention was decisive and calm, showing their strength without causing lasting harm. As the mob fell silent and began to retreat, someone in the crowd recognized the identity of the man who had appeared and cried out in shocked disbelief at the presence of the fourth Hokage. A civilian shouted that the demon was Minato's son and asked how Minato and Lady Kushina were there. Kushina reacted with anger at what had been said about her son. Minato explained that this was the only day they could see their son and that he had risked his life to come. All he had asked was that the boy be treated as a hero, not a demon. A nearby shinobi, part of the crowd, confirmed that Minato's son had indeed been seen and asked if today was the only day Minato would be present. Minato answered that it was and that his son was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. The crowd apologized. Kushina demanded that they leave, and Minato warned them not to tell anyone what they had learned or he did not know what he would do. The crowd dispersed with a hint of regret for how they had treated the Hokage's son. Minato looked back and saw Kushina hugging Alice and Naruto, the two children holding hands so tightly it seemed they would not be separated. Minato asked, surprised, whether Alice was a jinchuuriki. Alice looked up and smiled and confirmed that she was. The two parents were stunned to see a child smile upon admitting she had a demon within her. Naruto explained to his parents that Kurama and Nabi were connected, and because of that bond the two children shared a special connection with each other. Naruto described how they could sense each other from anywhere. If one was in danger the other would know, and anything that happened to one would be known immediately by the other. Alice added that the four of them could communicate whenever they wanted, as long as Kurama and Nabi were informed, because the two-tailed spirits could enable telepathic communication. The children burst with excitement over this, and Minato and Kushina exchanged amazed looks. Alice asked what they would do next. Kushina suggested that they spend the rest of the day together. The children cheered, and they spent the whole day keeping Naruto safe and enjoying themselves. They ate together, played games during which Kushina grumbled good-naturedly about being outdone by two little kids and laughed at Kushina's jokes. It was the best day Naruto and Alice had experienced in their young lives. When it was time for Minato and Kushina to leave, both children were sad. Alice felt Naruto's sadness as if it were her own, and she had come to think of Kushina and Minato as parental figures. Kushina felt the pain of seeing them cry and had already accepted Alice as one of her own. She wished she could stay and protect them, but she could not. She worried that, now that others knew who Naruto really was, he might become a target, especially from the Stone Village, and she feared for his safety. Kushina comforted the children and urged Naruto to train hard so he could protect the people he loved. Minato told them that after the parents left they should go to the Hokage's office for more instructions and that they would be moving to the Namikaze estate, a place for both Uzumaki and Namikaze, where they would receive training. Kushina asked Naruto to promise to protect Alice and to get stronger so he could defend himself from threats. Naruto promised that he and Alice would graduate the academy early, that he would protect her, that he would work toward becoming Hokage, and that Alice would aim to become an ANBU captain. Kushina hugged them both. Kushina mentioned that Naruto's godfather would also train him. She expressed concern about some influences but resolved to keep a close eye on Naruto's upbringing. Alice assured Kushina that she would help keep Naruto on the right path. Minato and Kushina promised to return for the children's birthday, and Kushina cried as she said goodbye. The parents waved as they departed and disappeared from sight. Alice recovered first and encouraged Naruto to go to the Hokage's office. Naruto nodded, thinking that at least they would return next year. As they made their way there, Naruto still drew glares and had objects thrown at him by some of the villagers, though others smiled and kept their distance. Some residents tried to stop the harassment because they did not want to harm the last descendants of two of the strongest clans and because he was the Hokage's son. From beyond, Minato and Kushina wanted desperately to return to Earth to confront those who mistreated the children. They even asked God for permission, but God said he understood their wish and that they could not return. At the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at the two children and gave them the kind, warm smile of a grandfather, putting them at ease. Naruto explained that they had been invited to move into the Namikaze estate and that they would receive training. Hiruzen confirmed that Minato had left him the key when he died. Hiruzen warned that there were numerous blood seals around the house and likely many inside as well, but he trusted that the children could handle the situation. He explained that Kakashi and some ANBU would help train them, and that Naruto's godfather would assist later on. The third Hokage ordered Naruto and Alice not to tell anyone who their parents were, not yet. He explained that the villagers who knew had been sworn to secrecy and that revealing it now would be classified at the highest level. Naruto and Alice agreed and followed him. They had to look up to see what the Hokage was pointing at. On the wall, behind the portraits of former leaders, Hiruzen Sarutobi pressed a hidden button and a small vault opened, revealing a sealed panel. Naruto asked what the seal was, and Alice, inspecting it as well, identified it as a blood seal. Hiruzen explained that the seal would respond only to Naruto and instructed him to bite his thumb and smear his blood across the mark to open it. Naruto did as he was told. When the vault unlocked and swung open, both children gasped and stared in amazement. Hiruzen tried hard not to laugh at their stunned faces. He remembered the last time he had laughed at Naruto and the prank that had followed. He did not want to repeat. He reflected briefly on the village's knack for mischief. Both Kushina, Uzumaki, and Naruto had been troublemakers in their time, but then he turned serious again for the children's sake. Inside the safe, there was more than just coins. Hiruzen explained that Minato Namikaze, Naruto's father, had been a master of sealing techniques. He had set up a seal that could expand the safe's interior and had prepared it for Naruto because he had a feeling something might go wrong. The special safeguards would only respond to Naruto's blood at his will. Hiruzen mentioned that there was a larger safe with an identical seal back at Naruto's home where more of the same provisions had been stored. As he spoke, Hiruzen imagined Minato and Kushina looking down with pride at what they had prepared for their son. There were also several scrolls inside the vault. One scroll bore an image of a fox and caught Naruto's attention. He handed it to Hiruzen to read. Hiruzen asked the village special forces to leave the room for a moment. They hesitated, then complied, and Hiruzen sat down to read aloud. Kushina's letter was full of warmth and advice. She wrote that the seal had been made by her and Naruto's father and that, Despite being an Uzumaki who did not care much for seals, she had helped prepare this for him. She urged Naruto to remember that she loved him and to promise to smile when he could. She advised him to make a few true friends he could trust with his life. Hiruzen read the words carefully, and Naruto's eyes filled with tears while Alice watched with a soft, glossy smile. Naruto promised to keep his mother's wishes. There was a second letter addressed to Naruto. Minato's words spoke of legacy and responsibility. He told Naruto that he was both his mother's and his father's legacy and offered fatherly advice, to do his best, not to be brought down by others, and when he was older and able to protect himself, to consider taking the Namake's name. Minato apologized for not being there and reminded Naruto that they both wanted the best for him. The children absorbed the letters and the weight of their parents' preparations. The vault had been more than a storage of provisions. It was a cautious, loving plan left by two parents who had wanted to protect their child. Naruto had tears of joy because he had just seen his parents and knew his mother and father had loved him before he was born. Alice told Naruto that she loved his parents and thought they were way cooler than hers, and she complained that it wasn't fair. Alice then asked if they were going to leave now. Hiruzen nodded, handed them a key, and told them they could leave. The two children hurried off but returned 10 seconds later. Naruto asked sheepishly where the house was located. Hiruzen huffed and explained that they should keep going north from there and they would see the house. He also asked them to come back tomorrow so he could introduce their new instructors. The children promised they would and dashed away. Hiruzen muttered that they ran fast when they wanted something but took their time when he asked them to do a favor, and the four Anbu stationed there exchanged bewildered looks at the Honorable Hokage's sudden complaint. Later, Naruto and Alice stood in front of a two-story house that was neither too large nor too small, and both were wide-eyed with their mouths open in awe. Alice marveled at the sight. Naruto explained that the gate had a blood seal and that he should be able to open it, though he admitted he hoped it would work. When Naruto placed his hand on the seal, it glowed a soft blue and the gate swung open. They walked up to the house, taking in the well-kept front yard even before stepping inside. The yard featured green grass, a flower bed near the porch, a couple of trees, a small pond, and a little bridge leading to the house. Alice smiled and called the place simple yet pleasing. Naruto added his usual enthusiastic exclamation. Both of them immediately became excited to check the house and hurried toward the entrance. Alice agreed to Naruto with a smile. The brunette and the blonde boy stood in front of a two-story house that was neither too big nor too small, exactly right for them. Their eyes were wide with wonder, mouths open in awe. Naruto and Alice reached for the gate key together and noticed a seal that had not been mentioned before. Alice noted irritably that their grandfather had forgotten to tell them about it. Naruto reassured her that it was a blood seal and that he should be able to open it. When Naruto swept his hand across the seal, it glowed pale blue and the gate swung open. They stepped into a well-kept front yard before even entering the house. The lawn was a vibrant green, a flower bed framed the porch, a few trees dotted the grounds, and a small pond sat before a little bridge that led to the front door. Alice smiled and found the setting simple and pleasing. Naruto responded with his customary excitement, and they decided to check the house. Naruto and Alice ran inside, overcome with enthusiasm. Alice was astonished at how large the place felt, while Naruto immediately began exploring. Alice called after him until she found him upstairs, sitting on a bed and looking through a photo album. She sat beside him and noticed, in the way only she could, that a tear trembled at the corner of his eye. Alice gently reminded Naruto that their parents had loved him with all their hearts, trying to calm him. The room around them felt like their parents' room. A window framed a field not far away, the walls were painted a deep blue, and a king-size bed occupied the center. There was a dresser, a bathroom, a walk-in closet, a desk, and soft rugs that seemed woven from silk. Naruto hesitated, then asked Alice a practical question about bed sizes. Alice explained that a king-size bed was larger than a queen-size. They laughed about it and agreed to continue exploring later, both growing tired as the sun dipped below the horizon. Naruto offered that they could sleep in his parents' room. The house proved to be more of a mansion than a simple home. In the kitchen, Naruto admired appliances far superior to those he knew at home and became excited at the thought of making ramen. The dining room had a table that could seat 6. On the second floor he passed his old room, which had been painted orange and still contained a crib, a playpen full of toys, and a plush that resembled Kurama. His crib had the name Naru sewn into it. A life-size portrait of his parents hung in the living room, and Naruto liked how it felt as if they remained there to watch over him. Alice remembered that his parents had been devoted ramen lovers. Naruto confirmed that proudly. Alice had found a large container labeled ramen in the kitchen and pointed it out. They decided to rest for the night and climbed the many stairs to the topmost bedroom, as the house had 4 floors in all. Distracted by their excitement, they did not notice that their hands had brushed together and then remained linked as they went up. They removed the covers to clear any dust and slipped into bed to sleep. Naruto drifted into a dreamlike mindscape where Kurama appeared. Naruto asked why they were there, half amused, and Kurama suggested calling Alice and Nabi. In an instant, Naruto, Alice, Nabi, and Kurama found themselves together in a white, endless space. As they approached, the woman spread her beautiful wings and her eyes darkened like a thunderstorm. Naruto became certain she was an angel. The man beside her revealed a tail that matched his blood-red horns, and his eyes shifted from deep crimson to scarlet. Both wore small, unnerving smiles, and the children slipped behind their tailed beasts for protection. Kurama and Nabi recognized the visitors and bowed. The woman greeted Kurama and Natalia. Kurama returned the greeting with formal respect. Nabi announced that her name had been changed by her current host and pointed toward Alice. The man simply nodded in acknowledgement. From a nearby vantage, Naruto and Alice stared in surprise. The feared 9-tailed fox, king of the tailed beasts, and his sister were bowing before 2 strangers. In their young minds, that signified great power. The woman raised an eyebrow and asked Nabi who had changed her name. Intrigued by the feat, Nabi explained again that her current host, Alice, had renamed her. The woman then asked them to step out from behind Kurama and Natalia. Alice looked to Naruto for reassurance. Naruto took her hand, linked it with his, and they approached the woman in white and the man in black. They bowed together. The woman introduced herself as the god and extended a hand in greeting. The man identified himself as the death god. The children's eyes widened at the presence of a deity and the death god standing before them. Alice inwardly panicked at the idea of death. Naruto, by contrast, felt an excited thrill. Kurama asked the visitors what they were doing here. Naruto and Alice asked if they had done something wrong. The god and the death god reassured them that they had not. The death god explained that they had come because the 2 children would play major roles in the future, and the deities wanted to help them become stronger in order to prevent a dire fate. Naruto nodded, and Alice, still a little unsure, nodded as well. The death god said that the world had been created by the gods and that they would not allow those who sought to destroy it to succeed. He produced 2 swords and explained that the blades were called Soul of Death. The death god described the sword's purpose. They could detect corrupt souls, and when used with intent against such corruption, a soul would be delivered to him. He instructed the children that if they did not mean harm, the swords would have no effect on innocent souls. Physically, the swords would behave like ordinary weapons. Any damage could be repaired by channeling chakra into them. Once a sword took on a user's chakra for the first time, it would respond only to that user, growing unbearably heavy for anyone who tried to wield it without permission. If the sword was out of reach, thinking of it while putting a little chakra into the hand would bring it to the wielder. Naruto raised a hand to ask what they would gain by accepting the swords. The death god said that question would be answered later. The swords continued to float silently in the air. The god added that Naruto and Alice were protectors of their home and warned them that they would face difficult times. The children would need to work together and not doubt one another. The god's expression grew serious as she shared a vision. She had seen both of them badly injured and exhausted, reduced to tears and apologies. Naruto asked why anyone would apologize to him. The tailed beasts behind the children nodded in shared puzzlement. The death god concluded by saying that they would encounter a man who harbored a deep dislike for tailed beast hosts and their companions. A brief pause followed, and then the conversation shifted as the deities prepared to guide the children toward the challenges that lay ahead. Kurama and Nabi both growled. Kurama growled that he hoped the man would die, and Nabi, equally furious, growled that even that would be too good for him. They were ready to bring pain to anyone who harmed their children. Naruto and Alice stood there, imagining the punishment so fiercely that the offender would wish he had never been born. The god warned them that if they did not grow stronger than they were now, the terrible future he had hinted at might come to pass and they might die. If that happened, the whole world would be left without its saviors. The god then asked the two children whether, before he bestowed a gift to help them in the near future, they would use the bond they shared to help the world. Naruto looked determined and nodded his agreement. Alice matched his determination and nodded as well. She turned to the two-tailed beasts before her and asked Kurama, as a brotherly figure, and Nabi, as a sisterly figure, to help save and protect the world. The god and the death deity were taken aback. They had not expected a 7-year-old or any host of the beasts to ask for their consent. They usually dragged the hosts into a problem without asking. Naruto watched Alice with obvious pride. Nabi promised that they would help, and she told the god and the death deity that they did not want that terrible future to happen to Naruto. The deities acknowledged this together, and the god said he would grant them the power. About a year later, after learning a little about the future, the god had given them special gifts. Naruto wondered what horrible fate might have unfolded. Had they refused, the god had never provided full details. That happened roughly a year earlier. Both Alice and Naruto were now 9. They had grown stronger, though not invincible. Teacher Iruka had become much kinder to Naruto. Naruto remembered when Iruka finally confronted him. In a memory, Naruto and Alice walked to the academy early one morning. Half the villagers glared while the other half smiled at them. Naruto suspected those smiling were the same people who had tried to harm him on his 8th birthday when his father had threatened them. Iruka kept glancing their way, as if he wanted to say something, but he looked away again and remained like that through the morning. At noon, during taijutsu training, Naruto chose Alice as his partner because she knew the academy routine and he had a mixed set of techniques learned elsewhere. Alice noticed Iruka approaching before Naruto did and told him. Iruka praised the two of them for their taijutsu and then asked if they could speak after school. The question buzzed in their heads for the rest of the day. After class ended, they waited for Iruka by the old swing in front of the academy, Naruto's favorite spot when he felt down. Iruka came out and walked toward them. While they tried to keep their conversation private, Alice linked to Kurama mentally and asked for a connection to Naruto. Kurama agreed. The two exchanged a few quiet thoughts so Iruka would not overhear. Iruka then apologized for how he had treated them. He admitted he had been unfair to Naruto and explained that he had been blinded by hatred for the nine-tailed fox because his parents had died the day the creature attacked. He also apologized to Alice for treating her poorly simply because she was friends with Naruto. Alice forgave him, and Iruka said he understood if Naruto could not. Naruto forgave him as well, saying he did not like holding grudges. To celebrate, Iruka offered to treat them to ramen. The three of them went off to their favorite ramen shop, and Iruka ended up spending far more than he expected that day. That was the day Alice and Naruto began to see Iruka as an older brother. Their mother and father could speak to them mentally, and the god and the death deity had given them a way to summon Kurama and Nabi when they needed them. He could only summon Kurama and Alice could only summon Nabi. Most of the villagers stopped glaring at him and throwing things, which he appreciated. They could be annoying. He was not like that broody Uchiha. He was his own person and he did not want to be pampered. He was independent. Practically everyone knew he was heir to both the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans. They had been trying to push him toward that organization, but he refused to be treated like breeding stock. As an Uzumaki, he resented being coddled. Tuchan had once told him to be nice to Sasuke and try to be friends with him, but that was difficult when Sasuke kept challenging him to fights. He thought Sasuke seemed like he always had something stuck up him, as if a whole tree were lodged inside. He forced himself to get up, get dressed, fix his hair, and head to the kitchen, where Alice was already cooking breakfast. Alice woke up very early and groaned at the hour, but she got ready and decided to make pancakes. By the time she finished, Naruto walked into the kitchen. They had both changed a lot and grown stronger, but they still acted their age. They were not going to announce themselves to the world and rush headlong into danger. Naruto wore clothes reminiscent of what Minato had worn in his academy days. a black long-sleeve zip-up sweater with an orange stripe running down each sleeve, dark pants, and high-top ninja sandals. His hair had grown longer, and like his father he had two side bangs framing his face with some hair falling over his forehead. Alice dressed in a style inspired by Kushina, a dark mesh shirt under a sleeveless baby blue top that crossed like a simple wrap, long enough to reach halfway down her hips, with black shorts and sandals. She admired Kushina and considered her a role model and a mother figure. Alice thanked him for the compliment, and Naruto realized she had heard him. She was connected to him in ways he still did not fully understand. After they had been told by the divine to be protectors of the world, they had the chance to meet Naruto's parents again. The weapons the spirit had given them turned out to be useful, and when they completed their task of collecting enough souls, Minato and Kushina would be granted a second chance at life. They had also been granted an ability to learn quickly, almost like a photographic memory, which had led to some awkward moments in the past. Alice preferred not to dwell on an embarrassing memory that had been removed later. Their teachers were excellent. Mato Gai for taijutsu, Hataki Kakashi for ninjutsu, Yuhi Kurinai for genjutsu and some medical guidance, Yuzuki Yugao for kenjutsu, Gekko Hayate for other weapons, and Sarutobi Asuma for chakra fundamentals. The students respected them and trained hard, aiming to be strong enough to protect others. Alice called for Naruto to hurry, and Naruto told her to do the same. They laughed at their own dawdling and set off for the academy. The rest of the school year was uneventful. Naruto and Alice trained diligently, and by the time they were 10 they had reached a mid-level rank. They had yet to go on a mission to test their skills against real opponents, which made them feel unproven. One surprising development was that the two had become friends with Sasuke. The stoic Uchiha, known as the Ice Prince, actually seemed happier around them and often wore a rare, small smile. Training together, excluding sessions with their sensei, became part of their routine. Sasuke behaved more like his old self, before the tragedy that had befallen his clan. Naruto enjoyed spending time with Sasuke and reflected that he never would have expected to say that. He thought that if it had not been for Alice's presence, Sasuke might still be lost in his own thoughts. They continued to grow, train, and face their futures together. They walked home and passed a small dock where Sasuke sat at the end facing the lake. Naruto wondered how Sasuke had gotten there so quickly. He had left after them and was already brooding by the water. Naruto looked down, reached for a shiny pebble, and felt compelled to toss it. Alice asked what he was doing. Naruto replied that he planned to knock a duck off Sasuke's head, certain the bird did not want to be stuck there. Alice urged him to go talk to Sasuke, explaining that Sasuke seemed lonely and lost, much like they had been. She reminded Naruto that Sasuke had lost his family. He was an orphan like them. Naruto felt guilty but agreed, and they walked down the small hill hand in hand towards Sasuke. Naruto called out to Sasuke, and Sasuke turned, surprised at being addressed. Alice invited Sasuke to play with them. Sasuke scoffed and dismissed them as losers, but Naruto pressed the point that Sasuke was lonely and needed friends. Naruto explained that his own parents had died shortly after his birth, that he had lacked friends until recently, and that having friends helped when facing hard times. Sasuke listened, taken aback, and after a long, awkward silence he allowed the smallest of smiles. Sasuke admitted he had not expected Naruto to be so insightful. Alice asked if he wanted to play, and Sasuke nodded. After that, the three of them played and trained together and became practically inseparable. When they asked why Sasuke had been so cold to others, he told them about the attack that had wiped out his clan. They were shocked, and Naruto told Sasuke that Itachi must have had reasons for what he did. Naruto urged Sasuke not to chase immediate revenge, but to focus on getting stronger so he could protect the people he cared about and confront his brother for answers. Sasuke reacted with anger at first but came to understand, and the three grew even closer. Naruto remembered, with amusement, that Sasuke had even met his parents once. The look on Sasuke's face had been unforgettable. The last 2 years at the academy passed quickly. A week before the graduation exams, most of the genin hopefuls were nervous, except for Naruto, Alice, and Sasuke. They felt confident. Their techniques were practiced to the point that they could perform them without hand seals. Irika reviewed everything with the students to prepare them, though he wished they would pay closer attention. The three top students often trained and ate at the Namikaze compound, occasionally stopping to relax, while in class their shadow clones kept up the appearance of being present. On the day of the exams, the students were anxious. Sasuke asked Naruto how the teams would be set up. Naruto knew the system because Minato had taught him about village politics and the shinobi system. Naruto explained that typically the top male and female students were paired with the lowest-ranked student. Alice pointed out that they were all top students, so Naruto suggested they would have to trick the elders again, just as they had once convinced an elder to give them candy and tomatoes. The idea excited Naruto. Sasuke rolled his eyes but harbored a small, sly smile, and Alice and Naruto shared mischievous grins. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in his office buried in paperwork when a cold shiver ran down his spine. He felt a twinge of unease. When Alice's name was called, she stood and walked out, returning 15 minutes later wearing a dark blue forehead protector like a proper shinobi. The three friends waited, and when Sasuke's name was announced, he walked down the aisle with calm Uchiha composure and returned wearing his traditional blue forehead protector. He glanced at Naruto and Alice, then nodded to them. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto began by reciting a coded verse about a fox striking when the silver light beams and when the rat was unguarded, for the pack to eat. Sasuke added a line about a hawk soaring so the flock could rest, reminding himself that Uchiha did not normally sing in public. Alice finished the stanza, noting that the vixen would strike when the fox did as the hawk flew toward the flock. Naruto then left the classroom. The class was confused. The song sounded pretty but odd. What the others did not know was that the three had developed the lines as a code. Naruto's verse meant that at midnight, when Mizuki was not on guard, he would act to protect the village. Sasuke's line meant that he would keep watch and head to the village, and Alice's meant she would join Naruto in the attack while Sasuke informed the Hokage. They suspected Mizuki of treachery. Naruto had his reasons for being particularly wary, and Sasuke did not judge him. They continued with their plan. Naruto had taken and passed his genin exam, and during it he had watched how Mizuki reacted whenever Naruto got answers right, noting his tightened fists and clenched teeth. To make their plan work, Naruto would need to trick Mizuki. Naruto approached the teacher and, in a roundabout way, flattered and provoked him to gain access to a task. Mizuki agreed and told Naruto to follow him, presenting the assignment as part of the test. Take the scroll from the Hokage's office to a specified place without being caught. Mizuki suggested that Naruto go at midnight. Naruto followed the instructions and signaled his two friends by whistling 3 times. Mizuki paid little attention to Naruto's signals. To him, the blond boy was always odd. Naruto accepted the task and planned to use it to set the trap. Later at Ichiraku, the 3 friends met to set the timing and details. Sasuke expressed surprise that Naruto had fallen for Mizuki's setup, and Alice joked about owing Sasuke money. Naruto ordered ramen, and after some back and forth he took a to-go order and the trio headed to the Hokage's tower. They entered the Hokage's office abruptly, startling the ANBU guards. The Hokage scolded Naruto for the entrance, and Sasuke noted that ANBU should not be easily startled. The 3 told the Hokage that Mizuki planned to betray the village by using Naruto to steal the scroll. Their plan was to make Mizuki believe Naruto would deliver the scroll, then ambush him. The original plan had been for Naruto to attack while Alice and Sasuke reported to the Hokage, but they had adjusted it so all 3 would act together with the Hokage's awareness. The Hokage listened and gave them permission to proceed, though he regarded the gleam in their eyes with concern and a prayer for protection. They prepared for midnight. The trap was set, and each of them knew their role. Mizuki had planned to betray the village using Naruto. He told Naruto to bring the sealing scroll to him in the woods. The plan was to make Mizuki believe Naruto would hand the scroll over and then ambush him. The original idea had been for Naruto to attack while Alice and Sasuke reported back, but the plan changed. The 3 of them decided to attack together and informed their superiors so everyone would be ready. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the 3rd Hokage, reacted with shock when the 3 requested to be placed on the same low-ranked ninja team. The trio argued that they were the only soon-to-be genin who could actually work together and win. Sarutobi hesitated, then grew uneasy when they hinted at embarrassing knowledge about him. He turned pale at the mention of a red-headed woman who might be interested in him and imagined far-fetched possibilities. Naruto passionately insisted on the assignment and also asked to change the fabric of their forehead protectors to crimson red, his with an orange fox, Alice's with a burnt orange fox, and Sasuke's with a navy blue eagle. Alice explained that crimson would symbolize the pain they had been through. The two foxes represented Kurama and Nabi, with Kurama having 9 tails and a brighter orange, while Nabi would be a secretive burnt orange with fewer tails. And the eagle represented Sasuke's desire for freedom and the Uchiha clan through blue coloring and red eyes with a white beak. Sarutobi sighed but allowed the request. The three left at once, leaping through a window as Naruto joked that a door was for civilians, not shinobi, and Sasuke retorted that doors were indeed for civilians. They set their ambush in the woods. Naruto would bring the scroll to the agreed clearing while Alice and Sasuke hid. Naruto intended to read the forbidden scroll to learn whatever technique it contained, reasoning that the knowledge would make him stronger and allow him to protect those he cared about. Alice and Sasuke, watching from the trees, worried about what Naruto might learn but hoped it would only help. Naruto opened the scroll and began studying the instructions for the multiple shadow clone technique. He remembered that Kakashi had said he would teach that technique but never had, so Naruto tried to learn from the scroll itself. Alice and Sasuke, hidden nearby, exchanged frustrated looks at Naruto's independent approach. After 30 minutes, Naruto had the basic idea of the technique down. Iruka, Naruto's teacher, arrived and reacted angrily to seeing Naruto with the forbidden scroll, scolding him loudly. Alice and Sasuke leapt from their hiding places and pulled Iruka away from Naruto to protect the plan. Iruka was confused. First he had heard that Naruto had stolen the scroll, then he found Naruto reading it while 2 genin were calmly restraining him. Sasuke and Alice hushed Iruka and explained that Naruto had known about the plan all along and that Mizuki was a traitor using Naruto to get the scroll. Mizuki then appeared, offering a false compliment and asking for the scroll so he could teach Naruto more. Naruto's expression shifted from his usual goofiness to a serious, determined look. Back among the trees, Sasuke and Alice informed Iruka that Mizuki was a traitor and that he had been using Naruto to obtain the forbidden scroll. Naruto already knew the plan and the others were using that knowledge to keep Mizuki from stealing the scroll and fleeing Konoha. Naruto was the strongest of the three, so he would face Mizuki first and the others would jump in to help. Their original plan had failed because they had told the Hokage the truth, so they had made a new one. The only problem was that someone had shown up earlier than expected, so they had not been able to warn that person in time. Iruka listened and said that he understood. He looked stunned at the thought that a trusted friend could betray them and wanted to take a forbidden scroll and leave the village with it. Sasuke then pointed out that the man had shown his face, which made Alice and Iruka turn to watch the scene unfolding before them. Mizuki praised Naruto in a sugary, false tone, which made the 3 hidden observers growl lowly. Naruto thanked Mizuki, saying that the scroll had taught him something that would make him stronger, strong enough to protect the people he cared about. Mizuki returned a sickly smile and demanded the scroll, promising to teach him more. Naruto's goofy expression dropped and a serious look took over. Sasuke sighed that Mizuki was finished. Iruka asked what he meant, and Alice answered. Alice explained that Naruto had the strongest will among them and that he would fight to protect his friends. Lying to someone like Naruto was a dangerous mistake. She said it had probably been drilled into him by his mother, and Uzumaki did not respond well to betrayal. Because Mizuki had lied to Naruto, Mizuki had sealed his own fate, Alice concluded. Mizuki had been a fool to lie to Naruto to his face. Naruto's expression hardened into something like the 4th Hokage's when he prepared to fight. Narrowed eyes, a straight line of a mouth, and a face that showed almost no emotion. Naruto warned Mizuki that if he expected to keep the scroll in his dirty hands, he had another thing coming. Mizuki argued that the village hated Naruto and that Naruto was the demon who had caused the Nine Tails attack 12 years ago, claiming that the 4th Hokage had sealed the beast and that the fox had been reborn as Naruto. Mizuki accused Naruto of being the nine-tailed fox himself and said that everyone hated him for it. Naruto laughed at the accusation and thought it was ridiculous. He told Mizuki that the fourth Hokage had not turned him into a baby, the 9 tails had been sealed inside him at birth. Naruto explained that the demon sealed inside him and he were not the same person. Sealing something inside someone did not make them identical to that thing, the same way sealing a kunai inside a scroll did not turn the scroll into a kunai. Naruto tossed the scroll toward the tree where he knew Sasuke was hiding. He then threw 3 shurikens to cut Mizuki off. Naruto taunted Mizuki lightly and said he needed a good laugh before getting on with the fight. Naruto leapt to the branch Mizuki stood on and kicked him in the stomach, sending Mizuki tumbling backward. Sasuke and Alice sprang from their hiding place and intercepted Mizuki in midair with coordinated kicks that sent him back toward Naruto. Naruto followed with a chakra-enhanced punch to Mizuki's back that landed with a sharp, resounding impact. All 3 declared that there would be no mercy for a traitor, and together they pressed the attack, subduing Mizuki through a relentless, intense skirmish. Iruka watched from a nearby branch, astonished at how strong his top 3 students had become and how decisively they handled Mizuki. A voice came from Iruka's right. A masked covert operative had been nearby for some time and remarked that Iruka had been so focused on the confrontation that he had let his guard down. Iruka started and acknowledged the operative's presence. The operative advised Iruka not to be so absorbed in the fight, and then called out the names of Naruto, Alice, and Sasuke as they regrouped. The ANBU announced that they would take the traitor to the Tanned Eye for interrogation as he dropped from the tree and walked toward the 3 genin. Other ANBU members arrived and escorted Mizuki away. The ANBU named Inu praised the trio for a job well done. Naruto whispered that it had been nothing, and Kakashi shushed him. Sasuke suggested they go to the Hokage Tower and addressed Iruka as their teacher. With that, the 4 left for the Hokage Tower. A short pause passed, and the story resumed. Alice explained to Iruka that Naruto had the strongest will of the 3 and that he wanted to protect them with everything he had. She told Iruka that lying to Naruto would only bring disaster because his mother had taught him a rule: an Uzumaki should never be lied to. If an Uzumaki was loyal to someone, that person had to be loyal in return. Mizuki had lied to Naruto, and Alice declared that his betrayal would not go unaddressed, which sent a shiver down Iruka's spine. The walk to the Hokage Tower was slow and tense. A couple of ANBU appeared to escort them, which made the walk feel oddly formal. Some villagers who liked Naruto worried about his safety, while others who still feared the Kyuubi were concerned for Sasuke. Nabi opened a mental link between Naruto and Alice so she could speak to both of them at once. Kurama remarked that civilians often misunderstood the seal and that the tailed beasts sometimes grew frustrated, but Naruto and Alice exchanged knowing looks and then cut the link. Naruto muttered that tailed beasts these days were unpredictable, and Alice nodded in agreement. In the Hokage's office, the 3 genin stood before the Sandaime Hokage. Naruto told the Sandaime that he thought they had done a great job. Hiruzen removed his smoking pipe and apologized when the smoke made the genin cough. He thanked Naruto, Alice, and Sasuke for stopping Mizuki before he could reveal valuable information about Konohagakure, and he also thanked Iruka for allowing them to carry out the mission. Hiruzen produced new forehead protector cloths for each of them. Each protector bore a different crest set against a deep crimson background. One depicted an orange fox with 9 sweeping tails. Another showed an orange fox with 8 tails and a partial 9th, and the last displayed a blue hawk in flight with eyes that recalled the Sharingan and a pale beak. The 3 genin removed their old protectors, attached the new cloths so the crests sat on the right side of their heads, and bowed together to thank the Hokage. Hiruzen told them to go home and rest and to report to the academy in a week. When Alice and the others asked about the original schedule, the Chunin teacher explained that the meeting had been changed and that all parents and guardians had been notified. After they left the tower, Iruka stepped forward and asked the Hokage which teams Naruto, Alice, and Sasuke would be placed on. Hiruzen smiled gently and said that the 3 of them would be on the same team. Iruka bowed and left, content. The next day, a bright yellow blur streaked through the village as Naruto dashed along with Alice and Sasuke close behind. A few minutes earlier, the 2 raven-haired teens had gone to Naruto's old apartment at his request. They climbed the building stairs and knocked on the door. Footsteps sounded on the other side, and when the door opened the sight inside made them frown in disbelief. Naruto stood there in his old orange jumpsuit, and the Raven teens reacted with surprise and irritation. Naruto gestured toward his clothes as if proud of the discovery. Alice demanded that he take it off, but Naruto refused. Sasuke, clearly tired of the outfit, ordered him to change. The three argued briefly about the jumpsuit, making their way back toward their next destination. If he still hated Itachi as he used to, and if Itachi and the jumpsuit stood in front of him, he would destroy the suit before anything else. Naruto refused to change and shouted his refusal, then leapt out the window. His two friends chased after the blonde for an hour until hunger forced them to stop. They bought a bowl of Ichiraku ramen and used it as a trap, then used ninja wire to pull the orange-clad boy to the nearest clothing shop. The shop clerk offered a greeting as the two bought new clothes for Naruto. Back at Training Ground 7, they burned the old jumpsuit and every other similar outfit found in the apartment. Naruto protested loudly as his new outfit was put on: black Anbu-style pants, a black unzipped sweater trimmed in orange with a red Uzumaki insignia on the back, a navy blue short-sleeve shirt underneath, and black open-toed sandals reaching to his shins. Afterwards, Sasuke insisted they go eat ramen, dragging the still-wrapped Naruto to the Ichiraku stand. A week of training passed quickly. It was time to return to the academy for team assignments. The trio waited as Irika stepped in and praised them briefly before beginning the announcements. Irika announced the teams, and Team 7 was named to include Uzumaki Naruto, Akane Alice, and Uchiha Sasuke. Sakura protested loudly that it was unfair for the top three to be together, and Irika explained that the assignments were made by the Hokage and were not his decision. Irika continued with the other team assignments, placing Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame together and reminding Sakura that she would also have medical training at the hospital. He finished the announcements and dismissed the class for lunch. Team 7 went to the academy rooftop to eat. They remained alert, each holding a kunai, when a shuriken flew toward them. They dodged and regrouped, taking positions to cover each other's blind spots. A lazy voice praised their teamwork, and a man in jounin clothing stepped from the shadows. He wore a mask over the lower half of his face, had a slanted forehead protector over one eye, and silver hair spiked to the side. Naruto broke into an excited greeting and ran forward to hug him. Kakashi revealed that he was to be their new sensei and asked if they were indeed team the students confirmed. The trio then began to worry aloud, comparing Team 7 to legendary and tragic teams of the past. They listed how past teams had produced great figures, some who became leaders and others who vanished or left, and they worried that Team 7 might be cursed by association. Kakashi listened and reassured them that he saw potential and that they were destined for great things. He gestured toward the forgotten bento boxes and suggested they eat. The students asked about the final tests for becoming genin. Naruto and his teammates admitted they had overheard the Hokage discussing the test a few days before with some jonin because the Hokage's door had been open. Kakashi said he had already trained them and knew their teamwork was solid, so he planned to give them a mission the next day. Naruto muttered that it would be a D-rank mission. The next day proved tedious. Sasuke swore as he and his teammates chased the demon cat Tora for the 5th time that day. Since other genin were occupied with their sensei tests, Team 7 had been assigned most of the small missions: cleaning parks, rivers, houses, stores, and gardens, babysitting annoying council children, and tidying kennel facilities. They were tired of repetitive chores and grumbled that they had trained so hard only to spend days chasing a mischievous cat. Naruto announced through his intercom that he had caught the cat and asked whether it had the red ribbon. Sasuke replied that of course it had the ribbon and wondered why they had been chasing it otherwise. Team 7 stood in the mission room before the daimyo and a few chunin, with Irika present. Naruto complained that they needed a C-rank mission while Tora purred in his arms until the daimyo's wife snatched the cat away. The Sandaime explained that normally he would not allow a newly minted genin team to undertake anything higher than a D rank, which was the standard assignment for genin, but Naruto had a way of getting under his skin. While the Sandaime spoke about mission ranks, the team chatted about the ramen they planned to eat next at Ichiraku, trading ideas about miso, tomato, and shrimp. Kakashi noted that he would have shrimp as well. The Sandaime found himself sighing and scanning the mission scrolls. He could not, in good conscience, assign a C rank meant for mid to high-level chunin to such a young team. In the end he assigned them an escort mission to accompany a bridge builder to the Land of Waves. Escorting the bridge builder to Zuna was supposed to be straightforward, but a report from Kakashi arrived halfway through the journey. Team 7 had encountered the demon brothers who had ambushed them on the road. The Sandaime read the details and, aware that the bridge builder had not been entirely truthful about his situation, decided to allow the team to continue the mission and watched as his hawk carried his response back to them. Kakashi told the others that the Sandaime had permitted them to proceed, and Team 7 smiled in relief. They had not expected to face the demon brothers. It was one of their first real confrontations on a mission. The ambush had taken place at a strange puddle in the middle of the road on a clear, drought-stricken day. Naruto had deliberately dropped a chakra-coated kunai into the water. When the two demon brothers revealed themselves, one of them found the kunai stuck to his shoulder. In a coordinated response, Sasuke supplied a strong fire-style jutsu while Naruto added a wind-style technique. Their combined attacks overwhelmed the brothers, and Alice used an earth-style technique to restrain them. Under pressure, the brothers confessed what they knew, and Tazuna admitted his own deception. Despite the danger, the team decided to continue the mission. Team 7's luck did not improve. They were later confronted by an A-rank missing Nin, Zabuza, and the situation became intense. Naruto voiced his frustration and blamed Tazuna aloud for attracting powerful enemies. Tazuna protested, but the team focused on protecting their client. Alice positioned herself in front of Tazuna to keep him safe while Kakashi confronted Zabuza and was caught inside a large water formation. Naruto reminded everyone of their bond. Kakashi had once warned them that abandoning a teammate was unacceptable, and the team refused to leave their sensei. Naruto prepared a plan. He took a Fuma shuriken from his travel pack and handed it to Sasuke, who activated it with a flourish. When Zabuza dodged the apparent weapon, a hidden Naruto clone emerged from within the shuriken and tackled the Kirinin, creating an opening that freed Kakashi. The team used their coordination and techniques to recover from the ambush and press on with their mission. After Kakashi was freed, the clone vanished. The two adults exchanged jutsu in a fierce, fast-paced duel, each trying to overwhelm the other. Naruto complained as he carried their sensei, who was twice his height, and grumbled that the weight might stunt his growth while urging Alice to say something. Kakashi had fainted after the battle, much to their frustration. Alice scolded Sasuke for not helping, pointing out that carrying Kakashi would not help Naruto's height. Reluctantly, Sasuke stepped in to help bear their silver-haired sensei. Naruto complained again and wiped his eyes dramatically. Alice responded by sticking her tongue out. Waiting for someone to wake took a long time. The trio sat around Kakashi, watching him rest. After 10 minutes they grew restless. Sasuke suggested that Kakashi might not awaken until the next day and reminded them that Tsunami had been kind enough to prepare lunch. As they rose and left the room, a small boy watched them with a heated glare and muttered that the ninjas were stupid. By the next morning, Kakashi was awake and explained how they had been fooled by a hunter Nin who had been working with Zabuza. Naruto angrily accused Kakashi of leaving them in danger because he had wasted chakra on Zabuza after being tricked by a very feminine-looking boy. Kakashi answered sheepishly. Sasuke asked what they should do next. Kakashi smiled with one eye and said they would train. Alice reacted with enthusiastic determination, declaring that they would beat those missing Nin. A small boy behind the group called that idea stupid. The boy wore overalls and had black hair and eyes. Alice asked who he was, and the boy snapped that it was none of their business. Footsteps sounded in the hallway as Tsunami entered, scolding the boy named Inari for being rude and reminding him that the shinobi had brought his grandfather home safely. Tsunami tugged on his ear until he apologized, and then sent him to his room. When Kakashi asked Tsunami about the boy, she looked sad and, after a moment, told Team 7 about her husband. She described how her husband had protected the village until his last breath and how Gato had been responsible for his death. Inari had admired his stepfather and wanted to be like him. After the killing, the boy grew cold and began to hate the idea of heroes because he viewed them as fake. Tsunami's voice carried the weight of that loss. Naruto stood and declared that they needed to start training, determined to show Inari that heroes did exist and citing his own father as an example. Sasuke and Alice shared a look and then agreed. Naruto told Kakashi to rest. They would train on their own because they had not revealed all of their techniques to Zabuza and he would surely underestimate them again. With that, Team 7 left to train. Kakashi sighed, wondering why his students were so independent. Tsunami voiced her concern for the children, asking if they would be all right. Kakashi asked her not to underestimate them and reminded her that, although they were young, they were shinobi who had chosen their path and would fight to protect the village if necessary. Tsunami looked troubled by the thought of children smiling after killing someone. When Tsunami asked about the children's parents, Kakashi became serious and explained that all three were orphans. Naruto and Sasuke had been part of shinobi families in the past, and Alice's father had once been a shinobi. After a pause, Tsunami apologized and left the room. The three young shinobi set off to train, determined to grow stronger and to prove that heroes could be real. In a meadow, the genin of Team 7 lay panting. They had been training for 3 hours and were finally drained of energy. All three stared at the sky, thinking about the confrontation that would soon take place on the bridge. They knew they were strong for their age, but they also knew that did not necessarily make them ready to face someone like Zabuza and his partner. Alice asked if they were ready to go back. Both boys sat up and nodded, each offering a hand to help Alice to her feet. The three made their way back to Tazuna's house, and once there they let Alice shower first, then Naruto, and finally Sasuke. That evening, Team 7 and Tazuna's families sat at the table eating dinner. They had been out all day and missed breakfast and lunch, and an awkward silence filled the room that irritated Naruto. Only the sound of utensils against plates could be heard before Naruto demanded that someone speak. Kakashi sighed and agreed to break the silence. Kakashi asked Tazuna about the history of the place. Tazuna explained that the Hidden Leaf Village had been founded by the first Hokage and his friend-turned-enemy Madara Uchiha, and that it had been created as a home where families and children could live without fear of shinobi attacks. He said that over time things changed and no place could keep everyone safe, but that the village had become one of the strongest because they fought for comrades with the will of fire. He noted that the village was at peace now and then turned the conversation toward the visitors. Inari stared at Naruto throughout Tazuna's explanation, and his stare hardened into a glare. Naruto told Inari to calm down, but Inari exploded, insisting that shinobi had no business there and that heroes did not exist. Naruto replied with anger, saying Inari did not understand pain and accusing him of being ignorant of real suffering. The room fell silent as Naruto, Sasuke, Alice, and Kakashi froze while Tsunami watched her son in alarm. Inari laughed coldly and then argued that the pain of the village's people was deeper. He assumed Kaiza had been Naruto's father and recounted his own bitter childhood. Inari described being mistreated by his village, feeling abandoned until he met Alice, who was also an orphan. He asked everyone to imagine returning from the store to find one's parents had been killed and to imagine having a sick infant sibling who needed care. He said he had been forced into impossible choices by violent criminals and then punished by the villagers for trying to act. His voice shook as he described the loneliness and anger that followed. Kakashi, Naruto, Sasuke, and Alice listened as Inari compared those losses to the families they had lost. Naruto spoke next, insisting that their pain was not the same. He described losing his parents at a young age, revealing that he was the son of Namikaze Minato, the fourth Hokage, and that their pasts had been marked by loss as well. He pointed out that Sasuke had lost his clan overnight and had watched it happen, that Kakashi had lost significant people in war and afterward, and that Alice had her own tragic history tied to this village. Naruto said he would not accept Inari's insult to those who had sacrificed themselves, and he defended the honor of his father and others who had fought for what they believed in. Naruto ended the argument by storming out of the house with Sasuke and Alice. The three left visibly angry, and Tazuna and Tsunami were left shaken, realizing the depth of those young lives. Later, Tazuna asked Kakashi if Naruto had been truthful about their past. Kakashi confirmed that Naruto had told the truth, though some details had been omitted for their own reasons. He explained that Naruto, Alice, Sasuke, and he were all orphans and that their pasts had been difficult. Kakashi revealed that Naruto's father had been the fourth Hokage and that Sasuke's family had been killed by his own brother. He added that Alice had originally come from this village. Kakashi then excused himself and left for the guest room, leaving the family stunned and wide-eyed at the revelations. One villager questioned if Alice was the same girl who had once gone on a rampage and injured Cho in a previous incident. The room filled with murmurs as they tried to reconcile the stories they had heard with the young faces before them. She cried to Kami and to Tusan, asking what they had done. She mourned that no one had known Cho was the reason the Akane family died. Akane-san had been the only shinobi in the village protecting them. They had pushed away her daughter, and little Hana had died because of Cho. She reminded Tusan that they had promised to protect the Akane family, but in the end they had neglected the last of them, and she cried even harder. It was true that the Akane family had a tradition of sending 1 or 2 members to a neighboring village to train as shinobi so they could help defend their home. No one knew when the custom began, but as long as there was an Akane they felt safe. The belief held until Alice's family died and she left the village. Only then did the villagers realize they no longer had anyone to protect them. The 3 of them returned to the meadow and vented their frustration by striking a nearby tree. Tears streamed down their faces as they released their anger and grief. After 10 minutes they turned to one another and began to cry openly. They embraced and mourned everything they had endured past, present, and future, knowing there would be little time for sorrow later. Once they had said what they needed to, the 3 lay back on the grass and fell asleep. In the afterlife, Minato, Kushina, Mikoto, Atsushi, Alice's father, Yui, Alice's mother, and Fugaku, recently released from the Shinigami, watched their children with sorrowful eyes. Kushina remarked to Minato that it pained her to see their children like that, and Minato nodded in agreement. A soft, melodic voice added that their children were strong. The parents watched as their kids struck the tree, embraced, and cried, and the mothers found themselves shedding tears as well for the difficult lives their children were living without them. Inari sat in his room, staring out at the ocean and turning over the argument he had had with the young shinobi not long before. Naruto's words kept echoing in his head. He wondered if he had been naive to think he was the only one who hurt. He had forgotten that other ninja endured their own hardships, and that while he had lost his father, his mother had lost her husband. She was grieving too, and all he had been thinking about was his own loss. He told himself he hated this feeling. A knock at the door brought him back. Inari answered hesitantly that he was there, and Kakashi asked to come in. Before Inari could respond, Kakashi was already in the room. Inari felt no fear. Something in the way the shinobi stood made him trust that he meant no harm. Inari returned to watching the sea while Kakashi sat beside him. After a quiet 5-minute pause, Kakashi told Inari that everything Naruto had said was true, though Naruto should not have shouted it in that way. Kakashi reminded him that Naruto, Alice, and Sasuke were all orphans and asked Inari how old he was. When Inari replied that he was 8, Kakashi reflected that by that age his 3 students had already lost their families. He remembered seeing Naruto sad and frightened, and then changing after he met Alice, becoming stronger, happier, and fiercely protective of his friends. Kakashi said that Alice and Naruto supported Sasuke after his own great loss and that, despite rarely seeing them cry, there would always be times their pain resurfaced. He advised Inari not to be harsh with them, explained that they had all suffered, and apologized for Inari's loss while reminding him that others sometimes carried darker pasts. With that, Kakashi left the room. Inari picked up a photograph of his father and forgave him inwardly, thanking him for the sacrifice. He looked out at the ocean again and resolved to apologize to Naruto the next day. The 3 young ninja did not return to Tazuna's house that night, nor that week. They stayed out training. Kakashi checked on them day to day and sometimes assisted with their training, but the trio insisted they wanted to become stronger. The truth was they did not want to go back, not yet. They did not want pity from a family who knew their stories. They were not children who could be easily understood. When others pried, they feared their burdens would be revealed. Naruto had blurted out what they had tried to keep private, and that outburst had only heightened the tension between them and those around them. They wanted, for the time being, to forget. They wanted to train together and protect one another, because they feared that if one of them fell, the others might break. Their bond was built on shared pain. They relied on each other to keep their inner demons at bay. When the three finally returned to the house, it was the day before they had to face Zabuza and his companion. The atmosphere in the house was awkwardly quiet until Inari offered apologies first to Naruto, then to Alice and Sasuke. Still, things were not the same. That night they went to bed early, unable to bear the looks on Tazuna and Tsunami's faces. Kakashi watched their sorrow and could hardly hide his own. He had trained them when they were younger, more closely with Alice and Naruto, and he quietly wished for the mission to end so they could all go home. The next day, the fight began. Naruto fought Zabuza's partner and realized the opponent was Haku, the boy who had woken them during one morning of their training. Tazuna remained at home, guarded by multiple shadow clones of Sasuke, Alice, and Naruto. The three were trapped inside a protective dome and exchanged rapid attacks with Haku. Sasuke shouted for them to dodge, and they moved just in time as a storm of throwing needles came flying through the air. The battle continued fiercely until Haku launched a precise barrage that struck Alice. She was hit and collapsed, silent and unmoving. Naruto and Sasuke cried out and rushed to her side. Alice, weakened and fading, managed a few words urging them to keep fighting before she slipped into unconsciousness. Naruto wept openly, pleading for her to hold on. Sasuke joined his pleas and confessed how important she was to him. Naruto, overwhelmed with emotion, admitted that he cared for her deeply and that he had grown protective because of how much she meant to him. Sasuke echoed the sentiment, admitting that he needed her too. Alice smiled faintly as they spoke and then went still. The two boys stared at her, tears falling, and slowly set her down. Naruto's spirit flared with a red aura of determination, and Sasuke's special eye ability finally awakened, revealing distinct markings as his focus sharpened. Both radiated a fierce, controlled rage. For them, their closest friend and someone they loved dearly now lay motionless, and their grief hardened into resolve. They rose together, ready to continue the fight. May the gods have mercy on Haku, for they certainly will not. The two of them stared into Haku's eyes and announced in cold, calm voices that he should prepare to die. Haku watched the two shinobi before him and regretted what he had done. He had thrown Senbon at Akane Alice. She had not dodged in time and the needles had struck her. Naruto cradled her in his arms, desperate and pleading that she not leave them. Naruto confessed that he had finally realized he loved her and that he became jealous when others paid her attention. Sasuke urged them not to lose her, saying they needed one another. Alice smiled weakly, then closed her eyes and went limp in Naruto's hold. Guilt and resolve washed over Haku. He had expected anger, but not this depth of grief. He had not known until now that the raven-haired boy with blue highlights possessed a Kekkei Genkai and that the blonde boy carried an unusual red chakra. The sight of their chakra manifested in different patterns made Haku realize his fate was sealed, yet he would still fight for Zabuza, the man who had saved him and whom he had vowed to protect. Haku tried to delay the fight by asking if this was the first time they had seen a comrade fall. Naruto answered through tears that Alice had been like a third member of their team, keeping them balanced, and that losing her made them unstable. He admitted that he loved her. Sasuke, his eyes hard with fury, said they were tired of being alone and of losing people close to them. Haku had taken something precious from two children who had grown up as outcasts. Their grief turned to anger, and they prepared to attack. The two young shinobi lunged forward. Naruto struck Haku on the jaw. Then Sasuke's foot landed on his head and pushed him to the ground. A heavy wave of killing intent pressed down on Haku, pinning him in place. When he finally managed to look up, he saw chakra manifesting beside them, Naruto's taking the form of an angry fox and Sasuke's an armored warrior. The energy was overwhelming. Naruto's voice was cold as he told Haku that he hated killing, but that today might be different. Haku shivered and stopped struggling as the pressure of their intent bore down on him. When the tension eased, he sprang up and leapt away. He created more Senbon and sent them toward Naruto and Sasuke, but they dodged with practiced ease. Sasuke unleashed a fire-style jutsu that rushed at Haku like a cascade of flames. Haku dodged as best he could, but some of the fire touched his leg and burned him, causing him to cry out. Naruto rushed forward with a kunai and struck Haku in the shoulder, driving him back with a painful blow. Haku screamed and, in a moment of despair, asked to be killed. Naruto, surprised by such an answer, hesitated and looked to Sasuke for guidance. Naruto then drew the Soul of Death, the sword given to him and Alice by Kami. The presence of the sword shifted the atmosphere of the battle. Naruto vanished and then reappeared behind Haku. He silently asked whether he had been any good, meaning his actions for Zabuza rather than the fact that Alice had been injured. Naruto allowed himself a small, sad smile and told Haku that Zabuza had been fortunate to have met him. With a swift, decisive strike, Naruto ended Haku's suffering. Haku fell quickly. Naruto felt a warm liquid on his face, reached up, and realized he was crying. He sheathed his sword. Sasuke walked up, patted Naruto's shoulder, and asked if he was all right. Naruto stammered that it had been his first kill, then ran to the side of the bridge and vomited. Sasuke watched his close friend with a heavy, sorrowful expression, hating to see Naruto so vulnerable. Alice saw only darkness and felt as if she were floating. The voice of Nabi echoed through the void. Alice asked where she was and what had happened to Naruto and Sasuke. Nabi told her to calm down, and Alice followed that instruction. There was a long pause, then Alice asked again. Nabi answered that she had died and was in the space between the living and the dead. Alice gasped, terrified that she had left Naruto and Sasuke alone. A deep voice spoke with a stern, amused tone. God and the death figure appeared before her. God explained that it was not her time yet and that they had come to send her back. Death complained when God smacked him, and God scolded Alice gently before being interrupted by the death figure. Curious, Alice asked what it had been about. God explained that two people had died for each other, one protecting the other preserving his partner, and that their actions had been for one another, like a father and son. Nabi responded affirmatively when called upon. The death figure ordered Nabi to protect Alice and keep both her and Naruto alive, and to pass that duty to his brother as well. God and Death wished Alice luck before disappearing. Left alone in darkness, Alice followed a distant light. On the bridge, Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi stood over their fallen teammate. After the battle, Kakashi had nearly finished Zabuza, but then Gata had appeared and taunted Haku and Alice while they lay wounded. Gata's mockery was cut short when Sasuke struck him down. It was Sasuke's first kill and his reaction mirrored Naruto's shock. Naruto and Kakashi had taken down many enemies, and when the villagers arrived the remaining attackers fled. Alice began to open her eyes and started coughing. Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi each reacted with stunned relief that turned into joy, their eyes filling with tears. Naruto took Alice into his arms and hugged her tightly while she returned the embrace. Alice's wounds healed surprisingly quickly, given the special needles she had been pierced with. Naruto stayed by her side for the entire day. Each time Alice tried to bring up her confession of feelings, Naruto grew nervous and shifted the conversation, leaving Sasuke increasingly impatient. Team 7 gathered at the now completed bridge while the villagers bid them farewell. The mission had been completed successfully. Inari, trying to hold back tears, begged Naruto not to leave. Naruto smiled sadly and promised he would visit sometime, gently comforting Inari and patting his head. Alice, Sasuke, and Kakashi watched Naruto wipe away a few tears and smiled. Kakashi announced that it was time to go, and the three young ninjas rose and began to walk away as the villagers called their goodbyes and waved. Unnoticed by the team, the villagers had chosen to name the bridge after their blonde teammate. The group took their time returning toward Konoha, deciding to walk instead of traveling through the trees. Alice exclaimed that the mission had been chaotic, and the others agreed as they headed home. The group continued their walk home. The walk was calm until they were attacked by shinobi dressed entirely in black, their faces covered like Kakashi's. The leader pointed at Naruto and Alice and dismissed them as nothing more than objects. Kakashi's expression hardened at the insult. He could not accept someone calling Naruto and Alice things. Sasuke felt the same outrage. Without a plan, Kakashi and Sasuke launched at the masked leader, only to be intercepted by two other masked assailants. They had no choice but to fight. Naruto and Alice were each engaged with attackers as well, But more masked men appeared until they were outnumbered. They fought and defended themselves, but fatigue from the long walk left them at a disadvantage. One mistake allowed the attackers to overwhelm Naruto and take him away. Alice shouted in alarm, and in that momentary distraction a masked assailant struck her from behind and rendered her unconscious. She was seized and carried off. The masked group vanished, leaving Kakashi and Sasuke shocked and dismayed. Kakashi realized with rising panic that Naruto and Alice had been taken. Sasuke stood frozen with desperation. The two who mattered most to him had been taken, and he felt powerless. Kakashi decided they needed help and told Sasuke they had to hurry back to Konoha and get backup. Sasuke agreed, knowing they could not face so many enemies alone. The remaining members of the team climbed into the trees and raced toward the village, only 10 minutes away. Outside a cave, the masked leader approached a huge rock and slammed his hand against it, releasing chakra into the surface. The boulder shifted aside to reveal an entrance. The leader entered the cave and ordered his men to bring the captives into a designated room. The subordinates acknowledged and carried on the order. Naruto and Alice found themselves in the same cell, chained to opposite walls. When Naruto opened his eyes and saw Alice restrained, anger flared across his face. Alice began to stir and met Naruto's gaze. Fear filled her eyes. She whispered his name shakily, afraid of what their captors might do to them. Naruto forced a calm smile and tried to reassure her, insisting that they would get through this together. Alice took comfort from his determination and relaxed a little. Naruto added that Kakashi and Sasuke would come to rescue them, and they held on to that hope. Kakashi and Sasuke reached Konoha at full speed and raced toward the Hokage Tower, catching many villagers' attention. There was no time to enter through the front. They slipped in through a window and confronted the Hokage. Hiruzen, the third Hokage, demanded an explanation. Kakashi and Sasuke quickly recounted everything from leaving their mission to the ambush on the way back and the subsequent kidnapping. Hiruzen ordered the village's special forces to assemble and called for teams to join the search. Within minutes, special forces appeared with teams 8 and 9. The Hokage addressed the assembled squads and assigned a joint mission with Team 7 to locate and retrieve Alice and Naruto. The teams reacted with disbelief and concern, noting how strong Naruto and Alice were and how surprising it was that they had been captured. Kakashi explained that this mission would be considered A rank and that they all had to bring the two captives home. The teams departed immediately. Kakashi offered a silent hope for Naruto and Alice as they left. The teams dispersed briefly to gather their gear and soon regrouped at Konoha's main entrance. As they traveled through the trees toward the likely direction of the kidnappers, Kakashi explained the urgency of the situation. He told them that Naruto and Alice were treated differently by others because they carried a burden many did not understand. For that reason, enemies sought to harm them in cruel ways. They needed to reach the captors quickly or risk losing them. Pakun, one of Kakashi's ninja dogs, led the way by tracking Naruto's scent, while Akamaru followed Alice's scent. Shikamaru asked if Kakashi would explain the nature of the burden the two carried. Kakashi replied that it was not his place to tell. They would learn when the time was right. Asuma asked how the attackers had looked. Kakashi answered that they had been dressed entirely in black, masked, and organized. The search moved swiftly through the forest, determined and focused on bringing Naruto and Alice back safely. The masked figures wore standard ninja clothing and black masks. Asuma and Kurenai both nodded, and Kurenai urged them to be safe. Naruto cried out in pain as he and Alice endured punishment. It felt like hours to them both, though only 30 minutes had passed. The leader entered carrying a whip and moved to strike Alice when Naruto intervened, offering to take the punishment for her. Naruto took the blows as the leader continued. Masaru laughed, saying that he enjoyed the spectacle. Alice wept as she watched the person she loved suffer because of her. Masaru nodded, stopped the punishment, and left the room. Alice called Naruto's name, and Naruto managed a small, brave smile as he reassured her not to worry. Alice protested that she could not bear seeing him hurt on her account. They both thought bitterly about the chains that bound them to the walls. Now that Alice and Naruto had been captured, all the men had disappeared, leaving Kakashi and Sasuke stunned and distraught. Kakashi panicked. insisting they had been taken and reminding himself that they were comrades, not mere tailed beast hosts. Naruto tried to reassure Alice with a smile that nothing would happen and that they would get through it, and Alice calmed enough to agree, trusting that Kakashi and Sasuke would rescue them. Suddenly Naruto cried out as fresh pain was inflicted. What felt like an hour to Alice and Naruto had been only 30 minutes. The leader entered with a whip and moved to strike Alice, but Naruto stepped between them and offered to take the punishment himself. Naruto endured the lashes in her place while Masaru laughed at the display. Eventually Masaru nodded, allowed the beating to stop, and left the room. Naruto forced a weak smile for Alice while she wept and pleaded that he not shoulder the burden alone. He remained determined to protect her rather than let her be harmed. Outside, the combined teams of Kakashi, Sasuke, and the young ninja squads rushed through the woods with a single goal: to save Naruto and Alice. Even after Kakashi explained what had happened, the junior ninjas could not understand how two people so bright and cared for could have been captured. The teachers felt helpless too. Alice and Naruto had been like younger siblings, taught by them and shaped by their guidance. Now those two had been taken by ruthless men who could not tell a throwing knife from a scroll. It seemed unfathomable that anyone would target two children who had already suffered so much. Alice fought the academy lessons that forbade showing emotion and allowed herself to cry. She watched Naruto's eyes, once vibrant blue, now dulled by pain and regret, and still he tried to smile to reassure her. She watched Masaru return and strike Naruto again. Kurama's energy apologized inwardly for not preventing the harm. It had helped Naruto recover quickly enough for the torment to be repeated. Alice begged to take the pain for both of them, desperate that he not suffer on her account, but Naruto, gentle and unyielding, refused to let anyone harm her. The tracker Pakin located their scent up ahead, and the rescuers quickened their pace, closing the distance to the hideout. Sasuke murmured that they were almost there, and the group pushed harder through the undergrowth. In the hideout, Alice begged Masaru not to kill Naruto, insisting that he had done nothing and that Naruto was like her. Masaru smiled with cold satisfaction. He produced a throwing knife and struck Naruto near the chest. Naruto managed a weak smile and then slumped, appearing motionless. Alice reached for Nabi's energy and accepted it. Anger surged through her, and her hair shifted to a deep red, a sign of the Akane family's fury. As a tailed beast host, her transformation brought changes to her eyes and demeanor. She broke her bonds and let out a low, threatening growl that made Masaru uneasy. Masaru raged that they were monsters and beasts who deserved death, vowing that he and his men would ensure their destruction. The tense air was suddenly pierced by the sound of approaching footsteps. The rescuers were almost there. Masaru bragged that he had already done it to Naruto's boyfriend. Alice let her chakra flare and then vanished from sight. Masaru jumped away the instant he sensed her, and a crater opened where he had stood. She reappeared standing protectively in front of Naruto, two chakra tails swaying behind her. She glared at the white-haired man before her, intent on hurting him. Masaru declared that they were no match for him and threw 4 shuriken toward the two-tailed beast hosts. Alice's chakra alone deflected the attack, and she smiled as she prepared to strike back. Kakashi and Sasuke stopped in their tracks when Sasuke cried out in alarm. Kiba demanded to know what was happening, and Kakashi nodded before they resumed running. Shikamaru scolded Sasuke for stopping, and Kakashi explained that Alice, Naruto, and Sasuke all shared a special bond that affected them emotionally and sometimes physically, although he did not know when it had formed. As if proving his point, Sasuke began to growl Naruto's name through clenched teeth while tears ran down his face. He announced that Naruto and Alice were in danger and leaped away. The others followed or tried to follow, while Sasuke hoped Naruto would not die and urged Alice to hold on as he raced through the forest with Pakin at his side. Naruto woke confused in an open space beside a small lake, with trees ahead and a cave behind him. He walked into the cave and found Kurama lying there. Kurama, blunt and impatient, told Naruto that he had nearly died and that Kurama had brought him there to ease his pain. When Naruto asked about Alice, Kurama explained that Alice had gone wild after seeing him stabbed. She had taken as much chakra as she could from Nabi and was currently trying to stop Masaru. Naruto felt an overwhelming echo of her pain, and he could feel Sasuke's loneliness as well. Regret flooded him for allowing Alice to see him in agony. He realized he should have worked with her instead of letting her witness his suffering. The thought of leaving Alice and Sasuke in pain made him resolve not to die. A determined glow rose in him as he refused to give up. Two divine figures appeared to him, one a godlike presence and the other a death spirit. The godlike figure confirmed that Naruto had died in that confrontation, and Naruto broke down in sorrow and disbelief at the thought of abandoning his friends. Kurama exchanged a look with the godlike figure, and the godlike figure entrusted Naruto to Kurama's care. Kurama nodded and took responsibility for him. Back at the confrontation, Alice unleashed a powerful surge of chakra that overwhelmed Masaru and left him incapacitated. Naruto watched in stunned silence as Alice stood over Masaru, multiple crimson chakra tails swirling behind her and Nabi's energy still enveloping her. He was surprised by how fierce she had become, though he remembered their past moments of desperation and understood why she had acted so violently. He noticed that he was no longer bound to the wall and slowly rose despite the pain in his body. Ignoring the urge to collapse, he moved toward Alice and called her name. Alice turned to face him, ready to react. Naruto stopped and cautiously called Alice's name, but Alice lunged at him. She had lost control of her body. A violent, overwhelming urge drove her forward. Naruto shouted Alice's name and moved to defend himself as she lashed out. He scanned the cell for anything to use and picked up the kunai that had once been used against him. He raised it to block her chakra-infused claw and urged Alice to come to her senses. Alice leapt back and stared at him with blood-red, slitted eyes. Naruto told her that the person standing before him was not the Alice he knew. She struck him across the face and sent him flying. For a moment she began gathering a large chakra attack, then she stopped. Alice remembered the moment she had lost control. During the fight with Masaru, she had been overwhelmed by Nabi's chakra slipping free, and after injuring him something inside her had taken over. In a dark, empty space she felt alone and frightened, unable to tell where she ended and the force inside her began. A distant voice called her name. It was faint and garbled, but she recognized Naruto. Tears came to her eyes, and a bright light surrounded her. The presence of Nabi's chakra receding felt like relief, and when it sank back into its seal she fell to the ground and wept. Naruto felt immense relief as the chakra left Alice. Despite his own pain he rushed to her side and hugged her tightly, grateful that he had not lost a friend. He hoped Alice would not have to see the aftermath of Masaru's defeat. Sasuke had been determined to find the hideout of the man who had taken his two friends. When a cavern blocked by a massive boulder came into view he rushed forward. Kakashi-sensei landed beside him and quickly moved the boulder. Sasuke press. Inside, feeling both Alice and Naruto nearby. The first group of shinobi they encountered were defeated by Kakashi, and the second group by Team 10. At a fork in the passage, Sasuke went left while the others went right, certain the other path was wrong. He told his teammates to hold on as he pushed deeper, his will to save Naruto and Alice stronger than ever. 3 floors down, rows of cells appeared. After passing several, Sasuke came upon one with broken bars and a person slumped at the threshold as if badly injured. Inside he found Naruto and Alice, bruised and exhausted. Sasuke called their names. Naruto sighed with relief when he saw him. Sasuke helped them to their feet and began leading them out. Halfway to the exit, Alice collapsed. Sasuke carried her on his back because Naruto was still too sore to help. Outside, Team 10, Team 8, and Kakashi were waiting. Kakashi picked Naruto up and carried him away, and Sasuke felt grateful to be taking Naruto and Alice home. Back in Konoha, Naruto and Alice were rushed to the hospital. Villagers and shinobi who knew Naruto's background brought him flowers and gifts. Alice received far fewer visitors. Those who stayed by their beds constantly were Sasuke, Teams 10 and 8, Kakashi, the Hokage, and Sakura, who worked at the hospital and had been there when their ex-classmates were brought in. Sasuke scarcely left, only returning home to wash and eat after the Hokage insisted. He waited patiently for his teammates to awaken, knowing the Chunin exams would be coming soon. New semester, new teachers, new classes, same stress. A month had passed since the incident. Alice had lost control during a battle and in the aftermath stood over Masaru as his opponent lay defeated. Naruto watched in stunned silence as the girl he cared for was transformed by a fierce, rippling aura of chakra. The first group of shinobi they had encountered had been overwhelmed by Kakashi, and the second group had been handled by Team 10 alone. When the team came to a fork in the corridor, Sasuke had gone left while everyone else went right, trusting his instinct that the other path was wrong. Sasuke never left their sides. The Hokage eventually ordered him to go home to bathe and eat, but he returned quickly and waited patiently for his teammates to recover. After all, the Chunin exams were approaching. When the group returned to Konoha, Naruto and Alice were rushed to the hospital. Villagers and shinobi who knew Naruto's background brought him flowers and get-well gifts. Alice received few visitors. The regular visitors were Sasuke, teams 10 and 8, Kakashi, the Hokage, and Sakura, who worked at the hospital and had been there when the two ex-classmates were brought to separate rooms. Contrary to expectations, Naruto required the longest recovery period. He had been injured in the fight, and it took 2 weeks for him to fully recover. As soon as Naruto and Alice were well enough, Team 7 returned to Training Ground 7 to prepare. They trained so they would never feel helpless again. An hour into the session, Kakashi arrived and acknowledged that they were training. Alice grinned and affirmed it with enthusiasm. Kakashi began to speak about a possible mission, but he paused when he heard a hawk squawking overhead. He apologized and hurried away to deliver a message. Later in the Hokage's office, with other Jonin and fellow instructors gathered, the third Hokage announced that it was that time of year again. The room tensed at the reminder of past hijinks. A few years earlier, Naruto and Alice had turned 1 week into a festival of pranks that had terrorized the village and then become an annual tradition. The Hokage clarified that the Chunin exams would be held in Konoha this year and that several genin teams were being nominated. Kakashi nominated Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Akane Alice to participate in the Chunin selection exams. Yuhi Kurenai nominated Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Asuma Sartobi nominated Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akimichi Chuji. Might Guy also stepped forward to nominate his youthful students. Everyone was surprised to learn that so many rookies would be taking the exams. The next day, Team 7 met at the ramen stand instead of the training ground, which made Kakashi smile. He handed them a slip of paper and explained that it was their application for the Chunin selection exams. Naruto brightened, Alice beamed, and Sasuke offered a faint smile. Kakashi instructed them to go to the academy the following day, approach the 3 Chunin at the main entrance, hand over their papers, and proceed to the 3rd floor, room 1. When the team protested at the short notice, Kakashi sheepishly admitted that he had collected the forms earlier but had forgotten to give them to the students. In truth, he and the Hokage had been watching the team since the incident to assess whether they were ready to take part in a public event like the Chunin exams. Kakashi trusted his students, but he wanted to be sure. On their way to Naruto's house, Kanemaru, the Hokage's grandson, began to follow them. He tried and failed at stealthy tactics. Naruto called out that they knew it was Konohamaru and teased him about the poor disguises he had been using. Konohamaru insisted that his disguise was brilliant, but his attempt to hide under what he claimed was a rock ended with him and his friends inside a cardboard box. The box was abruptly tossed aside, releasing a cloud of smoke in shades of white and blue. Naruto, Alice, and Sasuke coughed as the smoke cleared. Konohamaru admitted through his coughing fit that they had probably used too many smoke bombs, and his 2 friends nodded in agreement. Konohamaru announced that he was Sarutobi Konohamaru, the future Hokage. Moegi added that she was Moegi, an aspiring kunoichi from Konoha Academy. Udon shared that he loved math. The members of Team 7 exchanged embarrassed looks as the Konohamaru Ninja Squad introduced themselves. Konohamaru proudly explained that their goggles were a gift from their grandfather and that they wanted to be cool and strong like Naruto. He then noticed Sasuke and Akane Alice among the other students. Naruto introduced Sasuke as Uchiha Sasuke and Alice as Akane Alice. Konohamaru, squealing with curiosity, leaned closer and asked Naruto if Alice was his girlfriend, making both Naruto and Alice flush while Sasuke merely smirked. Konohamaru reminded Naruto that he had promised to play ninja, and the younger trio brightened at the reminder. Naruto agreed and offered to teach them how to evade objects and increase their speed. Moegi, Udon, and Konohamaru eagerly accepted and ran off laughing, declaring that Naruto and his teammates would be the enemy ninja. Naruto chased after them, with Alice and Sasuke falling into step beside him. After about 2 hours of playing, Konohamaru ran ahead and collided with an unknown shinobi. Instead of apologizing, the team grabbed Konohamaru by the collar. Naruto and his teammates rushed forward. The male shinobi with warrior paint insisted that Konohamaru had started it, while his female companion watched with an indifferent expression. Sasuke's smirk provoked the boy, who tightened his grip on Konohamaru. Naruto's expression hardened and his chakra flared with quiet intensity. He warned the boy to release Konohamaru or face serious consequences. Surprised, the attackers let go, and Naruto returned immediately to his usual composure to check that Konohamaru was unharmed. The girl asked who they were. Alice explained that they were Konoha shinobi. Sasuke asked if the two were Suna shinobi here for the Chunin exams, and they nodded. Naruto cautioned them not to provoke a conflict between the villages, noting that Konohamaru was the Hokage's only grandchild and that such an incident could escalate. At that moment Naruto sensed a presence and became aware of Kurama's warning. Kurama in turn sensed Shikaku. A red-headed boy suddenly appeared, hanging upside down from a nearby tree and moving with subtle chakra control. Sand spiraled briefly around one of the Suna shinobi before the boy appeared in front of Team 7 and the Konohamaru squad. The newcomer's demeanor was cool and unreadable as he gave his name as Gaara and asked who the others were. Naruto introduced himself as Uzumaki Naruto, identified Alice as Akane Alice and Sasuke as Uchiha Sasuke, and presented the little boy behind him as Sarutobi Konohamaru along with Konohamaru's friends Udon and Moegi. Gaara, slightly irritated, replied that he had not asked for the full roll call. Naruto gave a playful grin, announced that they had to go, and departed with the children and his teammates, leaving Gaara watching them go with a faint, knowing smile. The following day, Team 7 headed to the academy, determined to be ready for the Chunin exams. Naruto and Alice walked with wide grins, while Sasuke was far less amused. He still bore a large red mark across his face from a recent challenge. 10 minutes earlier, Sasuke had accepted a fight against a peculiar boy in green spandex with striking eyebrows and had come away thoroughly bested. Naruto and Alice had enjoyed the spectacle, which only added to Sasuke's irritation. Sasuke pulled Alice toward class 3-1. Complaining about the situation. Alice protested as they were dragged along, and Naruto dashed after them, calling encouragements to Alice to stay strong. Kakashi observed his team with calm confidence. He had trained them since they were little and trusted their abilities, but he was quietly concerned about certain rivals, like Hyuga Neji, who would certainly participate in the exams. His attention sharpened when he noticed the bruise on Sasuke's cheek and saw Alice being dragged, still unconscious. Sasuke gruffly told Kakashi that he did not want to discuss it. Naruto arrived breathless and panicked over Alice's condition. Kakashi reassured him, noting that Alice was unconscious but not seriously harmed, and began to assess the situation with measured concern. Kakashi sighed and told them to go inside, wondering how he managed his team. Naruto and his friends entered the classroom. Naruto immediately spotted Gaara and could not resist a mischievous smirk, but he straightened and urged his teammates to focus. It had been decided by Alice and Sasuke that Naruto was the leader of their trio, though outsiders often assumed it was Sasuke. Sasuke and Alice nodded and fell into step behind the blonde. Ino tackled Naruto, Sasuke, and Alice as she called their names. Naruto asked her to get off them, and Ino cheerfully obliged. Team 10 gathered around Team 7, and Kiba approached with his group. Alice greeted Kiba, and the Rookie 9 were reunited. Naruto wondered aloud whether it was true that all of the Rookie 9 had been nominated for promotion, and Shikamaru lazily confirmed it before yawning. Alice glared at the silver-haired boy standing nearby. Kabuto made her uneasy. It did not sit right that he appeared to know so much about people he had just met. Alice asked Kabuto how he knew all the details about the genin. He rubbed the back of his head and admitted that he had taken the exam many times and had sources. Alice pressed him for an explanation, but Naruto shot her a look that told her not to pursue it further. A deep voice then ordered everyone to take their seats. Alice immediately reacted, calling the examiner a sadistic man and pointing him out. Naruto demanded to know why Ibiki had been assigned, and Sasuke's face went pale as he thought they were in for a difficult time. Ibiki could not hide a smirk as he looked at the three genin. He relished the idea of putting them under intense pressure. The expressions on their faces when the exam rules were explained would be exactly the kind of reaction he enjoyed. Kakashi shook his head, feeling sorry for them, and Kurenai and Asuma nodded in agreement. Naruto scanned the room and noticed he had not written a single answer, while Sasuke and Alice were already taking notes. He mentally called out in frustration, and Kurama asked what was wrong. Naruto asked Kurama to connect him to Alice through the mind link they sometimes used. Kurama sighed and established the connection, remarking on how short people's memories could be. Alice's voice came through the link. Naruto asked if she had the answers to questions 1 through 9. Alice admitted she only had the answer to number 5 and that she had filled the other spaces with a playful drawing of Team 7 triumphing over a caricature of Ibiki, complete with exaggerated action words. Naruto winced inwardly at Alice's antics but was not surprised. She had once drawn a silly scene about Sasuke being adopted by ducks when they were younger. Alice confirmed that the answer to number 5 was teamwork. Naruto wrote it down, but the time ran out. The examiner ordered everyone to put their pencils down and announced that it was time for the 10th question. Naruto held his breath, knowing this was the final choice. The examiner explained that each candidate could choose whether to attempt the 10th question. If a team chose not to take it, their points would be reduced to 0 and they would be disqualified. If they took it and answered incorrectly, they would lose the privilege to take the Chunin exam again. The room reacted with shock and confusion at the severity of the rule. Alice looked at Naruto, convinced he would never pass up the chance. Sasuke felt grateful to have become friends with Naruto, because Naruto's determination showed that destiny could be changed and that was worth following. Naruto loudly declared that he would take the question, vowing to become stronger, to prove everyone wrong, and to pursue his goal of becoming Hokage no matter the obstacles. His declaration stirred hope and determination in those around him, and many supporters voiced their approval. Half the genin in the room left after the announcement, and the atmosphere shifted toward anticipation for the upcoming battles. Sasuke observed how Naruto's resolve had inspired everyone and felt eager for the exams to move on to the actual fights. Naruto asked Q where they were and why, but he barely finished before he noticed Alice. Alice held Naruto's hand again and asked Q why they were there. Nabi explained to the children that this place was where hosts of the tailed beasts and their beasts met when speaking with another host and beast. A faint blue glow appeared, and a woman and a man emerged. The woman was dressed entirely in white, with a flowing gown and a halo of feathers that glowed golden. Her eyes were storm gray and her hair a light brown. The man wore samurai-style armor with swords at his sides. Instead of a halo, he bore blood-red horns and a matching tail. His hair was onyx black and his eyes glowed scarlet. When the woman unfolded her wings, her expression made her seem more like an angel, while the man's smile and the change in his eyes made the children uneasy. They ran and hid behind their beasts. Kurama and Nabi bowed upon recognizing the new arrivals. The woman greeted Kurama and Natalia by name, and Kurama returned the greeting with respectful bows. Nabi explained that her name had changed, and the man nodded in acknowledgement. Nearby, the scene shifted back to a memory. Naruto found himself dodging furious punches while shouting at a man named Tazuna. He was frustrated and exhausted. All he had wanted to do was help the gruff, drunken old man, and the situation kept escalating into conflict. Naruto blamed Tazuna for attracting powerful enemies, and Tazuna protested that it was not his fault. Kakashi watched the tense exchange and stepped in to calm the worried woman, Tsunami. Kakashi reminded her that his students, though young, were trained shinobi who had chosen this path and were prepared to fight when necessary. Tsunami looked sorrowful and asked how their parents would feel, prompting Kakashi to explain that the three in question were orphans. He added that Naruto and Sasuke had once had a shinobi family and that Alice's father had likely been a shinobi. Tsunami apologized and left the room, still troubled. Later, the three children returned to a field and punched at a nearby tree, tears streaming down their faces. After 10 minutes, they turned to each other and began to cry openly, embracing as they mourned everything they had endured, their past, present, and uncertain future. They knew there would be little time for sorrow later, so they let themselves grieve now. Exhausted, they lay down in the meadow and fell asleep. Alice glared at a strange ninja from Kusa. The pale skin, the unsettling smile, and the snake-like tongue made her uneasy. She watched the Kusa ninja's eyes as they lingered on Sasuke and, occasionally, Naruto, and hoped this did not mean trouble. She thought to herself that there seemed to be so many unusual people around and silently wondered why. She muttered that the exams were awful as the grass shinobi regarded her with an unsettling expression. So far the team had gotten through the first round and were currently trying to finish their interview with Konohamaru. Konohamaru asked who the leader of the team was while he and his two friends took out their little notebooks and pens. Sasuke answered that Naruto was the leader. Konohamaru brightened at the idea that his older brother figure might be in charge. Naruto then began to boast about being the leader but suddenly broke into a coughing fit. Moegi handed him a cup of water and Naruto drank deeply until he could breathe normally again. Konohamaru warned him not to be too proud. Sasuke, still irritated, pointed out that it didn't matter who they lived with since everyone stayed at the same mansion and he already had his own room and clothes there. They moved on to stage 2, and running into the forest of death after signing a contract that absolved their proctor of responsibility had not been their brightest idea. Now, with danger looming, they knew they were in trouble. A few minutes into the exam the team was split up. An imposter had taken Naruto's place when Naruto stepped away briefly. Instead of pretending to be someone else, the imposter had chosen to pose as Naruto, which immediately made Sasuke and Alice suspicious. Alice demanded where Naruto was. The imposter insisted he was Naruto. Sasuke then tested him by asking who the leader of Team 7 was. The imposter replied without thinking that Kakashi was the leader, and then suggested it would fall to Sasuke if Kakashi were absent. Sasuke and Alice reacted fast. A shuriken and a kunai were thrown at the imposter to stop him from answering. The imposter protested that they were teammates and they could not do that, but Naruto's voice came from behind. Naruto explained that because they were teammates, Sasuke was allowed to stop anyone impersonating him. The real Naruto stood there with a confident expression. Alice moved in, pressed a kunai to the imposter's neck, and demanded his scroll. The Rain Shinobi tossed the scroll to Naruto, who caught it easily. Naruto and Sasuke ordered him to leave. Alice released him and he fled, thinking that the training in Konoha must be unusually thorough these days. They regrouped and celebrated having secured both scrolls. Sasuke suggested they head to the tower in the center of the forest, wait for the third part of the exam to be announced, and then be ready for whatever came next. Alice agreed with that plan, and Naruto grinned at the idea, though Sasuke muttered that he was surrounded by fools. Naruto and Alice continued to tease him lightly, and Sasuke sighed, wanting to finish the exam already. Their plan to reach the tower was interrupted by a sudden gust of wind and an unexpected obstacle, and once again the members of Team 7 were separated. Naruto argued with the voice inside him about snakes, saying he preferred foxes. The tailed beast inside Naruto, Kurama, reminded him to concentrate and to avoid dying in an embarrassing way. Kurama told Naruto not to imagine a funeral where the third Hokage would be told that Naruto had died by being swallowed whole by a giant snake, calling that an unacceptable outcome for his host. Naruto protested but tried to steady himself and move forward. Naruto decided they should get out and performed the multi-shadow clone technique. The snake that had been restraining them broke apart and the clones spilled free, all screaming and yelling. One clone complained that it had been gross. Another asked why their leader always summoned them only when he needed something done. Others joined in with grumbles about wanting a bath or a shower, one mentioning a bubble bath and another suggesting the hot springs. The real Naruto tried to get their attention, but the clones kept trading ideas about cold or hot showers, ramen, and playing poker. One of them admitted he did not know how to play, and another protested that someone was special. The chatter escalated until Naruto shouted for silence and reminded them that they were clones and that he could dispel them. He released them, and the clones vanished, leaving a frustrated Naruto to set off in search of Sasuke and Alice. Alice wondered where she was, though she realized she sat atop a gigantic tree. She muttered a prayer under her breath, focused chakra into her feet, walked down the trunk, and landed lightly on the ground. A talking snake addressed her and asked what they had there, calling her a lost little girl. Alice turned and was startled to find the snake. She asked if it could talk, and the snake confirmed, its hissing speech clearly pronounced. Alice told it that the drawn-out sibilant sounds were annoying, and the snake said it could not stop. It was a snake after all. When Alice asked where Orochimaru was, the snake replied that Orochimaru was nearby with Sasuke. Alice thanked the snake and ran off. Sasuke was not pleased. Being separated from his teammates was bad enough, and having someone dogging his steps made the situation worse. He wanted to get through this portion of the exams and move on to the finals. Promotion meant his whole team would move up together, and he refused to be promoted unless Naruto and Alice were promoted alongside him. He remembered how stubborn they had all become since the previous year, when a visit to Naruto on his birthday had involved Naruto's ghostly parents. That memory made him only more determined. When a pale figure with slitted, snake-like eyes and a scent of snakes appeared, Sasuke demanded to know what it wanted. The pale woman began to speak, but Sasuke cut her off, mocking the way she elongated her S sounds and telling her it made her sound ridiculous. The pale figure, Orochimaru, hissed that he could not wait to have Sasuke's body. Naruto reacted with disbelief and confusion at Orochimaru's words. Alice suddenly popped up beside Sasuke and teased that Orochimaru was confessing, suggesting they should tell Mikoto when they saw her. Naruto added that they needed to find Itachi so he could help protect Sasuke from Orochimaru. Sasuke agreed that this was a concern and that they should inform their elders. Orochimaru accused them of ignoring him and asked how they had recognized him so quickly. Naruto and the others said he was the only snake-obsessed figure they knew and began to accuse him of inappropriate behavior toward others, but Alice interrupted before they could say more. A brief pause followed, and then the tense confrontation turned physical. Orochimaru struck first. Naruto and Sasuke tried to evade, and Sasuke moved to counter with a fire-style technique, launching a volley of small fire projectiles at Orochimaru in a rapid, controlled attack. The clash felt like something out of an intense action scene, each move fluid and charged with energy as the three combatants tested one another without any graphic injury or gore. Sasuke rubbed his right shoulder as the teams lined up in the indoor arena. He noticed Naruto glancing at him, and more specifically at his shoulder. Alice nudged him and asked if he was all right. He sighed and nodded. Alice turned her attention to their blonde teammate and asked if Naruto was okay, noting that he looked nervous. Naruto offered a weak smile and explained that he was just shaky because of the encounter with Orochimaru. The rest of Team 7 exchanged looks and understood. An hour earlier, the genin of Team 7 had rushed through the forest of death, dodging kunai, shuriken, snakes, and their venom. Naruto had created 3 shadow clones to handle one opponent and produced a copy resembling Sasuke while assisting the real Sasuke in performing a physical transformation into a scroll. Orochimaru caught up quickly, stretching his neck to strike. The Sasuke clone dissolved, momentarily catching Orochimaru off guard. The snake-like ninja's anger shifted to focus on Alice, and he lunged. Naruto intervened, taking a hit to his neck as he protected her. Inside Naruto's seal, Kurama bristled at Orochimaru's presence. Naruto glared at the intruder. Orochimaru tried to tempt Naruto with offers of power and revenge, but Naruto and the spirit inside him laughed the propositions off, insisting that Naruto would not leave the village for such promises. Kurama made it clear that Naruto had people he would never abandon and that the fox spirit's bond with him was enough. Orochimaru was pushed out of the mental space and forced back into the real world. Back in the arena, Orochimaru retracted his attack and a faint mark remained briefly on Naruto's neck before fading. Naruto's appearance shifted. His eyes took on a sharper cast and his hair grew wilder, while several translucent orange tails swayed behind him as he drew on the fox spirit's presence. He warned Orochimaru to leave, asserting that he was still strong enough to defeat him. Orochimaru withdrew, and when Naruto settled, he clutched his neck and complained about the pain. The transformation dispersed, and Alice and Sasuke checked to make sure Naruto was uninjured. Sore and shaken, the three of them hurried toward the central tower of the training ground, relieved to put the encounter with the legendary snake ninja behind them. At the present, their proctor Gecko Hayate went over the preliminary round rules while the giant screen displayed the contestants' names before pausing on the next matchup, Uchiha Sasuke vs Yoroi Akato. The genin moved up to the balcony to watch the fight while Naruto and Alice stayed back. Alice gave Sasuke an energetic send-off and teased Naruto in return. Sasuke smirked, proud of his Uchiha heritage and confident in his abilities. Hayate ordered Naruto and Alice to leave the balcony, and the two pouted before answering their teacher and joining the rest of the crowd near Kakashi and Asuma's teams. Minutes into the bout, Alice asked Asuma where Sakura was. Asuma explained that Sakura was taking a special exam to train as a medic, a different certification involving healing, care, combat, and knowledge. She would still be eligible to take the Chunin exams later if she passed. Team 7 and Team 10 winced at the thought of the workload she was handling. Naruto watched Sasuke borrowing a technique associated with Rock Lee, and Alice laughed at the sight. Sasuke's opponent was knocked out and escorted away by the medical team. Sasuke strode over and lightly bopped Naruto on the head in a teasing, familiar way. The screen announced the next match, Uzumaki Naruto vs Inuzuka Kiba. Kiba turned toward Naruto and bristled as Naruto returned a fox-like grin. Kurenai, their supervising teacher, sighed and nodded when someone asked if it was too late to withdraw. Naruto grew excited, celebrating as it became his turn. He high-fived his teammates and jumped from the rail to the arena floor, meeting Kiba's gaze with a confident, fox-like smirk as he prepared to face his opponent. Naruto smiled when he saw Kiba's face go pale. He had never told anyone before, but he had wanted to fight Kiba since they were 5. The dog boy was full of confidence, and now Naruto wanted to finally see who was the alpha. Hayate warned Kiba to hurry or he would be disqualified and Naruto would win by default. Kiba mocked the idea that would be better, and Naruto growled at him, demanding that Kiba come over and fight to settle who was the alpha. Kiba did not move. Hayate threatened to tell Tsum that Kiba was backing out, and Kiba suddenly appeared directly in front of Naruto, ready to fight. His presence made the others tense and Naruto laugh. Kiba set Akamaru down and patted his head, telling his companion that they would do their best. Akamaru barked, and Kiba grinned. Naruto, spoiled for a fight, annoyed his usually calm sensei into starting the match. Hayate asked if the contestants were ready, then signaled the start and stepped aside. The two stared each other down until Naruto smirked. Kiba's eyes widened and he moved just in time to avoid a flying kunai. Naruto caught the weapon effortlessly and taunted Kiba for moving. Kiba answered by calling Akamaru, and Akamaru barked before transforming into a human-like version of his owner. The two leaped into the air and spun toward Naruto, trying to overwhelm him. Naruto dodged the first attack but missed evading the second, which sent Kiba tumbling toward his former sensei with a painful thud. Naruto rose and formed hand seals for the shadow clone technique. 3 Narutos materialized, and without instruction they rushed the duo. One clone threw shuriken while the others made more clones until the arena was filled with copies of Naruto. Naruto then performed a transformation technique, and all the clones shifted to take on Kiba's appearance. Akamaru reverted to his dog form and blinked in confusion at the many versions of his owner. He sniffed the air, they all smelled the same. The dog whined, and 5 Kiba figures looked concerned for him. Several of the Kiba figures called to Akamaru, urging him to come. Akamaru whined more, then transformed back into his human form and began to spin into the crowd of Kiba forms, causing them to vanish one by one. He kept at it until only 5 Kiba figures remained, the ones that had seemed worried for him. One Kiba reached out and called to his tired companion. Akamaru, exhausted, walked to him, and Kiba scooped him up and cradled him until he fell asleep. Naruto, still in disguise, challenged Kiba to continue without his dog. Kiba, angered, launched himself at the blonde, but he never reached him. The Naruto clones shifted back into their original forms. One clone struck a pressure point that left Kiba temporarily immobilized, while another clone drew a kunai and held it near Kiba's throat to make a point. Naruto's move was a tactical show of control, not meant to cause lasting harm, and Kiba calmed when he saw his pup safe and untroubled. Reluctantly, Kiba conceded. Hayate acknowledged the surrender and declared Uzumaki Naruto the winner of the round. Naruto dispelled his clones and approached Kiba. He used a small amount of chakra to release Kiba from the temporary immobilization and handed Akamaru back to him. As Kiba rose, Naruto told him to take care of his dog. Alice waited anxiously for her name to be called and wondered why it still had not appeared. Naruto snickered, and Alice playfully smacked him on the head. Sasuke smiled and urged Hayate to call his name. Hayate rolled his eyes and looked up at the giant screen, which displayed the next match, Yamanaka Ino vs Akane Alice. Alice hugged Naruto and stepped into the arena. Naruto blushed deeply and turned to Sasuke, who simply smiled. Ino stood across from Alice, looking far less confident. Hayate asked Ino if she was ready, and Ino nodded nervously. Ino found it hard to keep pace with Alice, who moved with quick, confident fluidity. Ino told herself she needed to anticipate Alice's moves, but it proved difficult. Alice was unpredictable. Alice announced that she would not let Ino win and launched forward. Alice's strike landed solidly, sending Ino backward and causing her to double over before collapsing. Naruto urged Alice to let Ino finish, but Alice glared at him and he fell quiet, retreating behind Sasuke. Ino tried to smile and fight back, but she stumbled and fell again. She forfeited and then lost consciousness. Alice murmured that she had thought Ino was stronger. The match had lasted 5 minutes, longer than many had expected, but Alice remained unsatisfied. She returned to the seating area beside her team, her expression still tense. Naruto reassured everyone that Ino had done her best, reminding them that Ino had grown from an eager fan into a capable fighter. She still needed training, but she was no longer useless, and would continue improving. His words were warm and encouraging as 2 medics carried Ino toward the arena's medical center. Alice watched Naruto as a strange, uneasy feeling rose in her chest. She did not like the way Naruto looked at Ino. Alice quietly wondered how Naruto and Ino had become so close. Naruto laughed and explained that he sometimes trained with Ino when he was free. They kept each other company and helped each other get stronger. He also teased that their shared blonde hair made them fast friends. Sasuke smirked, finding amusement in watching his 2 friends interact. After the match, only Chuji and a few Sannin remained. Alice noted that Chuji had not won and that Asuma would be treating him to a large meal. She also observed that Kakashi had been stingy with even a small treat. Alice reminded herself that the real tournament matches were a month away and that she, Naruto, and Sasuke all needed to train much harder. The next day Sasuke left the village to train with Kakashi, leaving Naruto and Alice behind. The 2 friends wandered through the village looking for something to do and found Konohamaru and his 2 friends hiding under their usual square rock. Alice thought it was odd that Konohamaru still used the same box rock trick. Konohamaru and the others begged Alice to play with them, mentioning that Naruto had promised to play ninja. Alice agreed, feeling a sense of déjà vu at the familiar request. Nearby, a tall, white-haired man asked Kakashi if those were the children he was expected to train. Kakashi confirmed that it was the Hokage's order and reassured the man that they were fine kids who would do well under his guidance. Naruto smiled softly at Ino, who was being escorted to the arena's medic center by 2 medics, and said that he believed in her. Alice watched Naruto and felt a strange flutter in her stomach. She did not like the way he looked at the other blonde. She whispered to herself asking how he had gotten so close, and Naruto laughed, explaining that when he had free time he sometimes trained with Ino, that she kept him laughing and he helped her grow stronger, and that they were blonde friends. Sasuke smirked at Alice's visible jealousy and found observing the 2 carefree friends amusing. After her match, Alice found only Chuji and a few sound ninjas still around. Chuji had not won, and Asuma had bought him a large meal. Kakashi had not even shared a single candy. The real matches were a month away, and Naruto, Sasuke, and Alice all needed to train much harder. The next day Sasuke left the village to train with Kakashi, leaving Naruto and Alice behind. They wandered through the village looking for something interesting and stumbled on Konohamaru and his two friends hiding under a square rock again. Alice teased Konohamaru about the odd shape and agreed when the children begged her to play ninja with them, feeling an amusing sense of déjà vu. A tall, white-haired man asked Kakashi if those were the students he was supposed to train. Kakashi replied that the Hokage had ordered it and that the kids would be fine. Jiraiya watched Naruto and Sasuke playing with the children and kept his attention fixed on the two, unconvinced by their playful demeanor. Kakashi explained that Naruto, Alice, and Sasuke were among the top genin in the village and that if Naruto had accepted the Hokage's offer to move them up a rank, Team 7 might have been high-level Chunin. Jiraiya expressed shock at the idea that Naruto could have become Chunin and asked why he would refuse. Kakashi explained that Naruto had chosen to stay with the other rookies so they could progress together. Sasuke and Alice often followed Naruto's lead, so his decisions shaped theirs. Kakashi warned Jiraiya not to underestimate Naruto. Sasuke then arrived, and Jiraiya narrowed his eyes as he asked how Sasuke had become undetectable. Sasuke smirked and credited Naruto for teaching him. Naruto used Alice's full name and spoke in a serious tone when he wanted her to follow him, a clear signal that something important was at hand. He led them toward the bathhouse, where they came upon a commotion with an unpleasant man. Alice confronted him and the crowd quickly dispersed. By the time she returned, the sun was setting and both were hungry. Naruto reminded Alice that Sasuke had promised to join them for ramen. Alice told the others to make sure Sasuke paid his share and waved at the eccentric man as they left. Naruto heard Kurama's voice in his head asking if the strange man would train them, and felt certain he would. Kurama replied that the man would, and that they would have to face it. The next day they trained at the training grounds. Alice challenged Naruto to a bet. Loser would buy whatever the winner wanted. Naruto won their sparring match and Alice regretted the wager. She refused to accept defeat at first, and Naruto pleaded for a jumpsuit as his prize. Jiraiya, watching from a tree, grew exasperated with their bickering. He leapt down and shouted for Alice to get Naruto his jumpsuit, startling both of them into silence. Naruto recognized Jiraiya and smirked. Alice sprinted at him and delivered a decisive kick to his midsection in a swift, anime-style motion. An hour later, Jiraiya explained that he would be their sensei for the final part of the Chunin exams and outlined that he could teach them jutsu not many knew. Alice asked why they should accept him as their teacher and demanded a reason. One of the girls told the other that she could be a famous shinobi. The other girl countered that a shinobi should remain unknown so enemies would not see them coming, so they could complete their mission and return home. A famous shinobi would only bring trouble. They discussed finding a sensei. One of them urged Ali-chan to accept this stranger as their teacher because they had no sensei. Kakashi had to teach Sasuke, and they had heard that if they could not find a sensei to train them they would be assigned one from Konoha. They mentioned the odd instructor with sunglasses and compared the different reputations they had heard about the available trainers. She admitted that she wanted to fight but conceded the point. Jiraiya, nearby, noted that he had not yet given his name and asked how they knew it. The girl answered that Sasuke had told her. Jiraiya agreed to meet them the next morning to test both of them and see how capable they were. The two children agreed and left the area. Jiraiya grumbled that the sensei was supposed to leave first as he departed with a shunshin. Sannin dodged most of the small fireballs. Only when one struck him did he realize the flames concealed shuriken. Sasuke tried his best to control the shuriken and the flames, but the technique demanded more chakra than he liked. Naruto and Alice noticed the distraction Sasuke was creating and decided to combine their techniques.